Hey everyone, it's Tobes, and welcome to your second monitor. Today is the next video in my series of Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate deck techs. I'm covering every legendary creature and background from Baldur's Gate in no particular order, so let's get to it. Today our commander, as you see, is Durnan of the Yawning portal paired with the Noble Heritage background. This is a bit of a strange pairing since Durnan's been known as a thinking man's barbarian. He was one of the first adventurers ever to return from Undermountain, the enormous dungeon beneath the city of Waterdeep, which is different from the city of Baldur's Gate, but they're both part of Faerun, so I guess he gets a pass. He used the wealth he retrieved from Undermountain to open the Yawning portal, a now famous inn built around the deep well that leads to that dungeon. Durnan has since retired from adventuring and become one of the masked lords of Waterdeep. Yep, those ones. Great board game. To run the inn and aid those looking to venture into Undermountain with arms, supplies, and sage advice. This is the nobility I see in him, so if you're looking for a justification for the pairing, there you go. I'm excited to show you what I put together for Durnan, but before we get started, let's go over our deck building template. I like to build my decks around my commander. I want to show off why the card is so cool and why I thought it deserved a deck built around it. So I take about 30 cards and put them toward doing whatever my commander asks of me. This is our game plan. It's what we do at the table and how we try to win. 30 more cards go towards supporting that game plan in the form of card advantage, acceleration, and interaction pieces. I usually run 1 or 2 sweepers, sometimes more if it would play into the game plan, sometimes none at all, and I almost always keep to a floor of 38 lands. That way I can always hit my land drops and cast my spells and, play commander. So let's talk about our commander cards. Durnan of the Yawning portal is a 3/3 legendary human warrior for 3 and a green. He reads, whenever Durnan attacks, look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may exile a creature card from among them and put the rest on the bottom in any order, and for as long as that card remains exiled, you may cast it, and that spell has Undaunted, meaning it costs 1 generic less for each opponent we have. And Durnan lets us choose a background, meaning we have a second commander, which is this legendary enchantment background, Noble Heritage. For 1 and a white, it gives our commander the ability, whenever this creature enters and at the beginning of your upkeep, each player may put 2 +1/+1 counters on a creature they control. That includes us. And for each opponent who does, we gain protection from that player until our next turn, meaning we can't be targeted, dealt damage, or enchanted by anything controlled by that player. Durnan's ability is sweet. Displaying his combat prowess allows him to select a creature from the top 4 cards of our library in an example of exactly the kind of mentorship I imagine for him. He kindly gatekeeps the entrance to Undermountain, preventing those too inexperienced or drunk from braving the dangers of the dungeon prematurely. Best of all, he makes sure that the ones who do receive his seal of approval understand that their best chance for survival and success lies in their willingness to bring allies for backup. The more, the better. It's also really cool that his Undaunted ability scales inversely to the progress of the game. With each opponent who gets knocked out, Durnan's discount dips by 1 mana. I like to think that this is a lesson in his restraint, wisely preparing his protégés while not letting them get too overconfident. Once you've assembled your party, after all, it's time for adventurers to adventure. But of course, we have to account for our background. Since Durnan's ability triggers when he attacks, we need to ensure he's strong enough to inspire the Yawning portal's patrons, which means he needs to be up for encounters of whatever challenge rating our opponents present. We don't always choose him to receive the Noble Heritage counters we get, but usually we do. And since it triggers when he enters as well as in our upkeep, he often attacks as a 7/7 on turn 5. But who do we want him to come at? The great part of our background is its political aspect. Nothing stops us from attacking an opponent who has accepted our noble offering, but it's usually better to send Durnan at someone who has rejected it. We can think of this as him stepping into the role of bouncer. An opponent who doesn't agree to peace bonding is practically announcing an intention to be rowdy, and replacing broken chairs and tables isn't free. This also has the benefit of showing our opponents that when they do take our deal, they get some measure of mutual protection from it as well, which encourages them to take it again on subsequent turns. Obviously, the game has to end at some point, and if all our opponents take our deal, we can be polite about having to clear table space in the tavern, despite how it might inconvenience a patron. Maybe we offer to attack someone we know will chump block with a token, just to get our trigger, thanking them for their forbearance as we do. This is a tavern full of adventurers, and these things happen. So, that's our deck. We have a bevy of brutes to find with Durnan, almost all of which can benefit from his cost reduction. This means that once our innkeeper is in play, we typically get to double spell on each of our turns by playing a value piece before combat, attacking to exile the best creature from the top of our library, then dropping it with Durnan's discount in our second main phase. We fill our playmat with high power creatures that follow Durnan's aggressive example as easily as they follow his advice. I like to think that they're the ones doing the real damage in our deck, while Durnan is mostly demonstrating his moves while detailing his past perils. This gets everyone talking, bragging about battles and spinning yarns of narrow escapes and triumphs in combat. Some of our creatures are the fallen enemies recounted in these anecdotes, while others are the adventurers doing the regaling, and all their crowing leads to them crashing into our opponents, who are soon left with stories of their own defeats. That's just the way it goes in any tales told at the tavern. You'll enjoy this deck if you like big creatures and bigger swings that make your board bigger still every turn, or if you think the best part of staying in an inn is all the colorful characters you get to carouse with before you set out on your next epic quest. So as usual, this Moxfield list we're going over today is linked in the video's description. At the bottom of it, you will see a considering section, filled with cards that I considered putting in the deck, but ultimately which didn't make the cut for me. However, if you have a bigger budget, or a smaller one, if you like what I've done here and you want to sort of go harder with it, or if you're interested in what we're doing and you want to juke to the side and take it in a different direction, that considering section is a great place to begin when you build your own Durnan of the Yawning Portal plus Noble Heritage deck. So let's begin. We're going to start with our Brutes section. These are all cards that either are power 4 or greater, or can easily become power 4 or greater without having to rely on Noble Heritage to put them there. Notably, I think of Durnan as our 30th Brute, because even though he's a 3/3, the Noble Heritage background will likely be in play when he enters, and so when he enters, we can immediately put 2 counters on him, and suddenly he's a 5/5. So yeah. We're going to start with our Benevolent Hydra. This is X and double green for a 1/1 Hydra that enters with a number of 1/1 counters on it equal to X. And it says if one or more +1/+1 counters would be put on another creature you control, that many +1/+1 counters are put on it instead. So this is Hardened Scales. It's the effect that means every time we get any number of +1/+1 counters on one of our creatures, other than the Hydra itself, we get an extra counter in addition. So it's a nice replacement effect, of which we have a couple of versions in this deck, and there's lots more in that considering section I mentioned. So this is really helpful for us for putting counters on our things with Noble Heritage. It means we're going to be able to put 3 counters on, generally, if it's just Noble Heritage, Benevolent Hydra, and some other creature we're putting those counters on. But it also works with itself, because it says we can tap the Hydra and remove a 1/1 counter from it to put a 1/1 counter on another target creature we control, which is notable because we're taking off a 1/1 counter. But when we put that 1/1 counter on something, this replacement effect is in effect. So we're getting to take 1 counter off the Hydra and put, with just this going on, 2 counters on something else. So that can be really nice for us. It's one of our several cards in the deck that cares about our counters theme. So we'll see more of those soon. Next up is Diadrene, Synthesis Amalgam. I have a commander deck, a video linked in the description of this commander, and I think it's really cool, not just because it has a great story where it's a robot from Edge of Eternities that was dropped on like a moon and then forgotten about, and so to repair itself, it had to incorporate organic parts with itself, and now it's sort of half organic and half synthetic, and it's kind of coming together. Not just a cool story, but a really cool card in this deck. Interesting, especially for our Brutes section. So Diadrene is a 0/1 legendary artifact creature construct with trample for X, a green, and a white. Diadrene enters with a number of 1/1 counters on it equal to the amount of mana spent to cast it. So it doesn't just get a number of counters equal to X, it gets that number of counters +2 if we're casting it, you know, in sort of a normal way. Notably, however, if we exile Diadrene with Undaunted, Diadrene's not going to benefit from Undaunted, really, because Undaunted only discounts the amount of colorless mana spent to cast something. So if we were saying, oh, we're going to cast Diadrene where X equals 3, and we're only going to pay 2 mana for it, well then, sure, that normally would be 5. Undaunted's giving it a discount of 3, let's say, since we have 3 opponents. And then Diadrene enters with a number of counters on it, not based on what X is, just based on the amount of mana we spent to cast it. So this is the only sort of brute in our section that doesn't really benefit from Undaunted the way we normally would think it does, but it is a solid card in this deck either way, and it can be a big creature, which is why it's in the brute section. So it comes in with a number of counters on it equal to the amount of mana we spent to cast it, and whenever we attack, we can remove a +1/+1 counter from each of up to 2 creatures we control, meaning we have to take 2 counters off of our creatures, 1 from one creature and 1 from another creature. It can't be 2 counters for the same creature. But if we do that, we draw a card and we make a 2/2 colorless robot artifact creature token, because Diadrene makes a little baby friend. So yeah, we get card draw, we get tokens, and most importantly, we get a way to use the 1/1 counters that Diadrine comes in with, and that we're able to put on our things basically every turn with Noble Heritage. Nice. Next is Lovestruck Beast from Throne of Eldraine originally. Love this card. This is 2 and a green for a 5/5 Beast Noble that cannot attack unless we control a 1/1 creature. So, a big creature that's inexpensive but needs a friend. However, this has an adventure. The way adventures work is when this card is in our hand, we can either cast the beast, and then it's just everything I said, and we ignore the adventurer. Or we cast the adventure first, which is a sorcery for a single green called Heart's Desire that makes a 1/1 white human creature token. And when we cast the adventure, we then exile this card, and we can cast the creature half of it from exile. We don't even have to wait for a later turn. So either you send it on an adventure and then you get the creature, or you just get the creature. You don't get to cast the adventure once this is in play. It's not like a prepare spell from Secrets of Strixhaven. But yeah, it's still pretty nice. We'll talk more about adventures as we see more of them later, since it's not really relevant for Lovestruck Beast and the trickery we can do with it with Undaunted. But yeah, this is a nice card for us to be able to cast with our commander, or just in general. Since we can get that Lovestruck Beast for a single green if we're casting it Undaunted. Or we just play this from our hand, and then for a total of 2 and double green, we've gotten a 1/1 and a 5/5 that can attack. And if we don't have a 1/1, or if that 1/1 ends up becoming not a 1/1 anymore, because it maybe has gotten counters on it, then Lovestruck Beast can't attack, but it can still block. Worth thinking about. And it still counts as a creature that is ferocious, meaning it has at least power of 4 or greater. Some of our cards just care about powers in our deck. We'll see their Power Matters section a little later, and Lovestruck Beast is one of them. Or rather, Lovestruck Beast can empower them, I should say. Ronus is one of them. Ronus, the Indomitable, is 2 and a green for a 5/5 legendary god with Death Touch and Indestructible. All sounds pretty good so far, except Ronus can't attack or block unless we control another creature with power 4 or greater. So that's Lovestruck Beast for us, or any number of our other brutes for the most part. We can also make a creature have power 4 or greater by paying 2 and a green, by giving another creature +2/+0 and trample until end of turn. So we can't give trample to Ronus, which would be pretty sweet with Death Touch, but we can give it to many of our other creatures, including Durnan. We don't even have to do that when Ronus himself is attacking. Or themselves? I think Ronus uses he, him pronouns. Not sure about that. And in any case, Ronus is pretty fun, especially since we can do cool tricks like have our opponents attack when Ronus is not able to attack or block, and then we activate Ronus to make one of our other creatures become power 4 or greater, and suddenly we have an indestructible death-touching blocker that our opponents didn't really expect. It's an onboard trick, but sometimes people forget those. Yeah, Ronus is pretty fun. Anara Wolvid Familiar is next. This is one of the Commander Legends familiars. It is a partner commander, which is not relevant in our deck, but it is a 3 and a green 4/4 legendary wolf beast that says, during your turn, commanders you control have indestructible. So this is pretty sweet as a way to protect Durnan. But it also protects Noble Heritage from anyone who wants to disenchant it or otherwise bounce it or exile it or whatever, since it is one of our commanders as well. So Anara, at least during our turn, protects our Noble Heritage and protects Durnan, which is even more relevant because if we're attacking with Durnan every turn to continually get his triggers, we want to be able to make sure that even if he's not going to trample over and do damage to an opponent, we at least don't lose him when we attack with him. Anara helps us with that. Next up is Bramble Sovereign, which can be super fun in this deck. Our curve is kind of interesting. If you take a look at the curve graphic when you check out this deck, it's pretty weird. But Bramble Sovereign is a great way for us to use our mana if we have 2 mana left over whenever we cast one of our spells, which often we will, thanks to the discount we're getting from Durnan when we're casting something Undaunted. So Bramble Sovereign is 2 and double green for a 4/4 Dryad that says whenever another non-token creature enters, you may pay 1 and a green, and if you do, that creature's controller makes a token that's a copy of that creature. So this is really sweet for us because we have so many creatures that are non-legendary, and because of Durnan's discount, oftentimes we can cast a creature for a discount of 3, but then we pay 1 and a green on top of that, and we get a second copy of that creature. But what's also interesting about Bramble Sovereign is it doesn't say whenever another non-token creature enters under your control, or you control enters. Meaning this will trigger on our opponent's turns as well. Now, when are we going to give our opponents token copies of their creatures? When we are making deals with them. This helps out with our politicking that we're already going to be doing thanks to Noble Heritage. Maybe we say, hey, look, I know you're not, or you've been interested in, taking the Noble Heritage counters so that I gain protection from you and your stuff until next turn. If you keep doing that, if you promise to do that again on your next turn, when you cast your next creature, I'll give you a copy of it. So this is a sort of bribing someone with a creature in order to make them friendly with us at the table, and that's not a bad way to do politicking. So yeah, usually we are using this card to make copies of our own creatures, but if we've got the opportunity, a little bit of politicking, if we've got some extra mana lying around, can't hurt. Next up is Forgotten Agent. I love this card. The playtest name for this card was Mr. Baby Cakes, so if I refer to him that way, that's why I love this card. This is an 0/3 elemental for 3 and a green that says whenever a player casts a spell, you may put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. That's any player and any spell. So the turn cycles with Forgotten Ancient in play, or other things like Managorger Hydra or Taurian Mauler, those type of cards, are really fun because it's always like, oh, you cast a spell, trigger, get a counter on my Forgotten Ancient. Oh, you cast a spell, Mr. Baby Cakes gets bigger. And it's just nice to be able to get a creature that it's not a brute initially, but it can certainly become one, and it can help other creatures become brutes. Because at the beginning of our upkeep, we may move any number of 1/1 counters from this creature onto other creatures. So we can spread those things out across our board. We can make Durnan bigger, we can make our other creatures bigger, even our tokens bigger, whatever we need. But it also doesn't say onto other creatures you control. So again, we can be political with this. We can say, hey, it's my upkeep. I'm going to order the triggers so Forgotten Ancient's trigger resolves first. I'll tell you what. Or no, do it the other way. This is even better. No, you can do it either one. So let's say Forgotten Ancient's trigger resolves first. We say, hey, I will put a 1/1 counter on one of your creatures as long as you accept the Noble Heritage option and put 2 more counters on one of your creatures. It could even be the same one. That's a permanent giant growth for that creature. And someone might say, sure, sounds good. And then follow through with it, which means we've given them the opportunity to betray us and they haven't, which shows their goodwill at the table. Or maybe they don't follow through with it. They take the Forgotten Ancient counter, but they don't take any counters from Noble Heritage because they want to come at us. And we're like, once bitten, twice shy, and we know what their intentions are. That's pretty fun. We could also do it in sort of the nicer way, which is to stack the Noble Heritage trigger to resolve first, so that if a player is trying to decide whether or not they want to take those counters and thereby give us protection from them until our next turn, then we can say, look, if you do take the counters, I've got a Forgotten Ancient trigger as well. I can choose to move counters from Mr. Baby Cakes onto your creatures. I will give you twice as many counters. You get 2 from Noble Heritage and 2 from Forgotten Ancient. I'll even put them wherever else you want. You can spread them around if you wish. You can't with Noble Heritage, but you can with Forgotten Ancient. And they might say, oh, okay, yeah, I'll take that deal. So it adds to our politicking in a pretty fun way. Also, notably, we're able to do that because this does not target. We don't have to choose targets for Forgotten Ancient's upkeep trigger. When it goes on the stack, we get to during resolution. And we're actually not choosing targets at all. We're just choosing creatures during resolution. Pretty cool. Next up is Goreclaw, Terror of Kalsisma. I love Goreclaw. She's such a cool bear. Just a really great legend. Super fun to build a mono green deck around as well. And in this deck, helps us out with like 20 of our other creatures. So 3 and a green for a 4/3 legendary bear that makes all of our creature spells that we cast that have power 4 or greater cost 2 generic less to cast. So I normally don't do effects that are sort of mana reductions, like discount effects, with the exception of things like, Durnan, which is in the command zone. Except sometimes they get discounted by more than 1 mana, which can, I don't do discount effects typically unless I have at least 40 hits for those discounts. But that's really true of discounts that only discount something by 1 mana. Goreclaw discounts things by 2. So I think in this deck we have about 20 cards that are creatures that have inherently, natively, power 4 or less, or 4 or greater rather, so that Goreclaw can give us those discounts, and so that works out for me to be pretty sweet. Obviously, it doesn't help any of our creatures that are power 4 or greater once they already hit the battlefield, but that little bit of discount can be helpful to us, so yeah, we might as well. But Goreclaw does help those creatures once they are on the battlefield with her other ability, which is whenever Goreclaw attacks, each creature we control with power 4 or greater gets +1/+1 and trample until end of turn. That includes Goreclaw herself, so she attacks as a 5/4 trampler. That's pretty great. So yeah, Goreclaw can help us out with a lot of our brutes especially, and with our Power Matters theme, she just fits here. Next up, we have Sigarda, Font of Blessings. This is the March of the Machine Aftermath Sigarda. 2 and a green and a white for a 4/4 legendary angel with flying that says other permanents you control have hexproof. Doesn't even say non-lands. They can't even Field of Ruin us with Sigarda in play. Obviously, she doesn't have hexproof because it says other, but this is a great way to protect Durnan and, of course, Noble Heritage when we need to. Since most of the games we're playing, we're getting Noble Heritage out on turn 2, and we're getting Durnan out on turn 4, and we're going to town on turn 5. Sigarda also lets us look at the top card of our library at any time, and lets us cast angel spells and human spells from the top of our library, which is a nice bonus for us. We have, in this deck, 12 humans, only 11 of which are in our deck because one of them is Durnan, who's in our command zone, and we do have some angels. Let's see if I can take a look. Angels? Yes, we have 4 angels, including Sigarda herself, so that's 3 other angels. So that's 14 creatures that we might be able to find off the top of our library and then cast with Sigarda, which means we've gotten them off the top of our library so that the next thing we cast may be from the attack trigger that our commander gives us. So if Sigarda's in play, maybe our first main phase, we cast a spell off the top, we get a nice creature, maybe it even helps us out, maybe it's like generating value in other ways, and then we see, at the very least, what one of the cards on top of our library is going to be, and that gives us at least a little information for what we're going to get from Durnan. But at least we've been able to clear something off the top occasionally with Sigarda, so a little bit of card advantage there. Plus all the protection she gives us. Next is a bit of a pet card of mine, but I really love this guy. This is the Earth King from the Avatar: The Last Airbender set. 3 and a green for a 2/2 legendary human noble ally that says when he enters, he makes a 4/4 green bear creature token, which is Bosco. It's not legendary, but we just know that character is Bosco. That's why the Earth King is in this section. He isn't a 2/2, but he comes with a 4/4, so that's pretty good. For 4 mana, we're getting 6/6 power and toughness. Pretty sweet. In addition, whenever one or more creatures we control with power 4 or greater attack, we search our library for up to that many basic land cards, put them on the battlefield tapped, and shuffle. Which means, if Bosco attacks, if our commander attacks when he's got at least power 4 or greater, when we have a bunch of creatures, all ferocious, attack, we get to rampant growth that many times during our declare attacker step. So we get a whole bunch of mana. The Earth King can really help us out with our acceleration, even if we just get him out on turn 5, or maybe we happen to get him out earlier than that. Maybe we've gotten Durnan out turn 3 and Earth King on turn 4, and we can just really get a lot of work done with him. So yeah, pretty sweet card that helps us accelerate. Next up is Agonosaur Rex from Aetherdrift. 3 and double green for an 8/8 trampling dinosaur. What a great rate. Amazing. It also cycles for 2 and a green, meaning when it's in our hand, if we don't want to cast it, we can pay 2 and a green and discard it to draw a card. And when we cycle it, we put 2 +1/+1 counters on up to 1 target creature or vehicle, no vehicles in this deck, and it gains trample and indestructible until end of turn. So really, this is almost like an adventure card. It's got 2 modes to it. We either get a 5 mana 8/8 trampler, or for 3, we get to put 2 counters on one of our creatures, give that creature trample and indestructible until end of turn, and we draw a card. So both ways this works for us. Oftentimes, if I have the Agonosaur Rex in hand, I will hold on to it, and it essentially becomes a 3 mana protect your commander spell, or give your commander trample, or give it counters, because it does all of those things. That replaces itself once we use that cycling ability. And of course, cycling is an ability, so counterspell isn't going to stop it. Obviously, you can counter abilities, but a sort of harder to interact with way of protecting our commander, or giving him trample, or giving him counters, all of that's pretty sweet. And if we happen to see this on top of our library, and it's the best card of the 4 when Durnan gets his attack trigger, well, if we've got 3 opponents, then this is an 8/8 trampler for double green and nothing else. Cool. Next up is Angelic Sellsword. Really like this card from the Thunder Junction Commander decks. This is 4 and a white for a 4/4 Angel Mercenary with flying and vigilance. So other than the mercenary part, I've just described a Serra Angel. So this base line is a Serra Angel. Very, very cool. It also says when it enters, or when another non-token creature we control enters, we make a Thunder Junction Mercenary creature token. A 1/1 red mercenary that if we tap it at sorcery speed, it gives another creature, or it gives any creature we control, +1/+0 until end of turn. So we can use these mercenaries to pump up our creatures, including the sellsword if we want to, but most importantly, it just means for 5 mana, we get a Sarah Angel that comes with a 1/1 friend and gives us an additional friend every time any of our other non-token creatures we control enter. So, pretty sweet. Plus those mercenaries, of course, they themselves can attack, they can block, they can have their ability used at sorcery speed, lots of value there, just free extra tokens for us. And whenever the sellsword attacks, if all that wasn't enough, if its power is 6 or greater, we draw a card. So a single instance of Noble Heritage, if we don't put our counters on our commander, we'll put them on the Angelic Sellsword. Now it's a 6/6 flying vigilance that draws us a card when it attacks, and still makes mercenaries every time we have any other non-token creature enter. So yeah, we can also, if we get two mercenaries that are not summoning sick, we can activate them both and make this a 6/4, at least until end of turn, which will still draw us a card when it attacks. Neat. Also, I think it's cool that this, the art on this Angel's Halo and the type of wings it has calls to mind Nuka Penna, which is one of my favorite planes. So yeah, pretty neat. Next up is Brawlios of Farah's Band. This is a sweet Foundations Jumpstart card for 3 and double green. It is a star legendary Centaur Scout with power and toughness each equal to the number of lands you control. We are a green deck. It's not hard for us to ramp, as we just saw with the Earth King. And so Brawlios is often at least a 5/5 for 5. That's pretty fine. And it says when Brawlios attacks, we draw a card, and then we can put a land card from our hand onto the battlefield. This is Growth Spiral. A free Growth Spiral every time our 5/5 attacks. That seems great. Yeah, works for me. Next is Garrick's Pack Leader. 4 and a green for a 4/4 beast that says whenever another creature we control with power 3 or greater enters, we may draw a card. So Garrick's Pack Leader is a 5 mana 4/4 that draws us a card when most of our creatures in the deck enter. Because it covers not just our brutes, but all of our creatures that are power 3 or greater, which includes Durnan. It includes a number of other creatures that we have. We've got a lot of 3/4s in this deck. So yeah, this can be a great value engine for us, in addition to being solid stats. Next is Geist Honored Monk. This is another star creature. It's 3 and double white for a human monk with vigilance, with power and toughness each equal to the number of creatures we control. So as long as we get a bigger, wider board, especially with maybe Angelic Sellsword making us a bunch of mercenary tokens, this can get huge, and it has vigilance, so it attacks and blocks with its huge body. And when it enters, we make 2 1/1 white spirit creature tokens with flying. So it doesn't just come in as, at the very least, a 3/3 vigilance for 5, which is not ideal rate, but it's a 3/3 vigilance for 5 that will grow as time goes on, and it comes with 2 1/1s that fly. So we are getting 5 power and toughness for 5 mana on a vigilant body, since we're getting 3/3 since it counts itself and both spirits, and we're also getting the spirits. Pretty good. Next up is God Eternal Oketra. Love this card. This is 3 and double white for a 3/6 legendary zombie god with double strike. Now I know you're thinking, this is an enormous towering god that is also an archer, so surely it has reach. No, Oketra doesn't have reach in any of her incarnations. Don't question it. I've got issues with this, but it's fine. But we do get a 3/6 double striker for 5, and that's pretty okay. But it also says whenever we cast a creature spell, we make a 4/4 black zombie warrior creature token with vigilance. So that's why Oketra is in this section. Even though she only has 3 power, despite her double strike, she gives us 4/4 zombie warriors that are vigilant whenever we cast creature spells. And we've got 45 creatures in this deck. So that includes casting things from exile, thanks to Durnan's ability. It includes casting Durnan himself. Any creature spells we have. It doesn't mean any creatures that enter the battlefield, because the creature entering trigger is what Angelic Sellsword has. God Eternal Oketra is a cast trigger, just worth noting. But yeah, pretty nice for us. It also says, when God Eternal Oketra dies or is put into exile from the battlefield, we may put it into its owner's library, third from the top. So Oketra gets exiled from the battlefield, or gets killed, and we get her back in a couple of turns if we want to. We can put her in the graveyard, but we're not doing a lot of graveyard synergy in this deck. So just tuck her back in the top, and suddenly she's third from the top, which means we can get her on our next Durnan trigger, since Durnan's going to look at the top 4 cards. Even if it's that same turn, Durnan's going to look at the top 4 cards, and so we're set to get Oketra. But if it's the turn after that, Oketra's second from the top now, so even easier. Great. Next up, we have Karametra, God of Harvests. This card is so cool in this deck. It is not as cool as it immediately looks, but it really does help us. 3, a green and a white for a 6/7 legendary enchantment creature god that is indestructible, and says as long as your devotion to green and white is less than 7, Karametra isn't a creature. So what is devotion? Devotion means you look at all of the permanents you control and you count up the colored pips in their casting costs. And that's your devotion to green and your devotion to white. For Karametra, we're adding them together. So Karametra provides 2 devotion to green and white right now, 1 to green and 1 to white. So if we had all these 8 cards in play, let's say, then our devotion to green would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we're already set for Karametra. But we've also got white devotion, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is a total devotion to green and white of 14. So Karametra is a creature. But if that happens to drop below, or if we haven't gotten there yet, then Karametra becomes a legendary enchantment. She's not a creature, and she's not a god, because god is a creature type, so she can't have the god creature type if she's not a creature, thanks to this ability. But she still is indestructible. So hard for our opponents to remove, even as an enchantment. And she still has this ability. Whenever you cast a creature spell, which is the same trigger as Oketra, you may search your library for a forest or plains card, put it on the battlefield tapped, and shuffle. This is so strong. Every one of our creatures comes with a free land. That land is tapped, but it's essentially appending Rampant Growth to each of our creature spells. But it's even better than that, because Rampant Growth only finds basics, and this says forest or plains. It doesn't say basic forest or basic plains card. So that means we can find one of our 2 in this deck for the form I made of it. Of course, you can add more typed duels. You add some more typed duels, and we get more typed duels. Like we look for a forest, and we get a forest and a plains. We look for a plains, we get a forest and a plains, and so forth. It's 1 card, but it's still that free acceleration effect on each of our creature spells that we get whether or not Karametra is a 6/7 indestructible creature. Next up, we have this card. This is Carvanista, Loyal Lupari. This is a Doctor Who card, which is why this card is weird. I'm not a Doctor Who person. I'm sure this is a really cool character. If you know who this is, let me know in the comments below. I would love to learn about them. I've been meaning to get into Doctor Who, I just haven't yet. So this is a cool card that is an adventure creature, but the creature side is 4 and a green for a 5/5 legendary alien dog soldier with vigilance, trample, and haste, and when Carvanista attacks, we put a 1/1 counter on each human we control. Like I mentioned, we have a number of humans in this deck, and Durnan is one of them. So we can play Carvanista pre-combat as a 5/5 trample, vigilance, haste creature, attack with it immediately with Durnan, put a counter on all of our creatures, or all of our humans that is, including Durnan, and then we've also got Durnan's trigger going off at that same time. So Carvanista seems very good for us. Just a 5/5 vigilance, trampling, haste for 5 is already sweet. One that pumps our humans, including our commander, even sweeter. So why not add a little bit more to that with Lupari Shield? This is a sorcery adventure for 1 and a green. It gives all humans we control indestructible until our next turn. So this protects not just Durnan, but all of our humans, and not just during this turn, but until our next turn. So it can really, if it seems like a board wipe is brewing, we can cast Lupari Shield to protect Durnan, not just during this combat that we're about to go to, let's say we're doing this pre-combat, but also we can do this, it protects Durnan from a damage or destruction-based board wipe until our next turn. That's great. But I mentioned something earlier when we talked about our last adventure creature, the Lovestruck Beast. I want to go and take a look back at Durnan himself. So Durnan, let's look at him right here. His ability is this. When he attacks, we look at the top 4 of our library, we can exile a creature card from among them, we put the rest on the bottom in any order, and for as long as the card we exiled, that creature card, remains exiled, we may cast it, and that spell has Undaunted. We are allowed to cast this card. The card that we are exiling must be a creature card, but it's the card that we have exiled, and we can cast that card, and the spell we cast has Undaunted. So what does that all mean? That means that with our Lupari Shield, when we cast when let's say we attack with Durnan, we put Carvanista in exile. We know that for as long as Carvanista is exiled, we can cast this card, and it will have Undaunted. But we don't have to cast the creature half of it. We can cast Lupari's Shield because that card is what we get to cast, not that creature spell. We're just casting a card. And that card is Undaunted, or has Undaunted. Meaning the spell we cast when we cast that card has Undaunted. Which means if we exile Carvanista using Durnan's attack trigger, we can then, at sorcery speed obviously, cast Lupari's Shield during our second main, during a later turn, whenever we want, and it will only cost us a single green, assuming that, we have any opponents at all when we cast it. Because that either half of it we cast from exile when it was put there from Durnan's trigger is going to have Undaunted. So we can have Lupari's Shield be a single green mana that maybe we cast on a later turn before we attack with Durnan to protect a Durnan during that turn and until our next turn. And when we do that, Carvanista will go to exile and we'll have to cast it from exile, which could be the same turn, but it's going to exile thanks to us having cast it as an adventure first. So we can then cast Carvanista from exile for its full cost. It will no longer be Undaunted because it has since changed zones since it was put into exile and it got the rider that it would have Undaunted when we cast it. So this is a way, it is us paying a total amount of mana that's greater, by getting only a single mana discount here rather than potentially a multi-mana discount on the creature. But it does give us the ability to only spend a single mana on a later turn before we attack with Durnan to make him and all of our humans indestructible and to keep them indestructible until our next turn. It's just a cool way to use cards that are essentially split cards like this. So we'll talk about it more on any other adventures that we see on our creature spells. I just wanted to bring it up here with Carvanista because it's a sweet interaction that not everyone knows how it works with Durnan. Next up is Hamza, Guardian of Evasion. This is another discount card. This is 4 green and a white for a 5/5 legendary elephant warrior that costs 1 generic less for each creature we control with a 1/1 counter on it. Not each 1/1 counter we have on creatures we control, but if we have 2 different creatures that have counters, one of them has 3 counters, let's say, and one of them has 1, then Hamza costs 2 less because we have 2 creatures, both of whom have 1/1 counters on them. If we have any other creatures as well, Hamza wouldn't care. So yeah. Which means that if that's the case, Hamza only casts for 2, a green and a white, and that's pretty sweet. Because Hamza gives all of our creature spells that same discount, 1 generic less to cast for each creature we control with a 1/1 counter on it. And since most games with this deck, our second turn is us casting Noble Heritage, meaning as soon as Durnan comes out and each subsequent upkeep, we're able to put counters on things. Now, oftentimes we are putting them on Durnan, so that's not increasing the amount of discount that Hamza gets and gives, since that's only 1 creature getting counters. But we have plenty of other ways to put counters on things, and if we have Hamza in hand, or we maybe have Hamza in exile thanks to a Durnan trigger, we might choose to put our Noble Heritage counters on something else in order to give Hamza and all of our other subsequent creature spells that discount. So pretty sweet as a way to sort of spread this discount around and for it to continually increase. It's also true that that discount, just so you know, stacks with the discount that Durnan gives. If Hamza is Undaunted, thanks to being exiled with Durnan's attack trigger, Hamza is going to get this discount and the Undaunted discount. Similarly, if Hamza is in play and Durnan attacks and exiles a creature, that creature spell will have Undaunted and will be discounted by Hamza. So we can really power out our biggest, best creatures when Hamza's in play and we're attacking with Durnan. Nice. Next is one of my favorite cards in Mono Green. This is Kogla the Titan Ape from Ikoria. 3 and triple green for a 7/6 legendary ape that when he enters, or when Kogla enters, I'm not sure if Kogla is male. Kogla might not use he, him, I'm not sure. Anyway, when Kogla enters, it fights up to 1 target creature you don't control. Great. Kogla just is a removal spell. If that creature is indestructible or otherwise hexproof or whatever, then we can't kill it. But for 7 mana, we get a way to do 7 damage to something and it leaves behind a 7/6 if that something wasn't able to kill Kogla in part of the fight. That's very good. And whenever Kogla attacks, we also destroy an artifact or an enchantment defending player controls. So Kogla comes with a free naturalize every time Kogla attacks. That's great. But Kogla does more for us as well, because we can pay 1 and a green to return a human we control to its owner's hand and give Kogla indestructible until end of turn. So this is cool in a couple of ways. We can use this to obviously protect Kogla. We have plenty of humans in this deck. We even have some ways to make token humans if we want to just lose them forever. But if we don't want to lose them forever, we can just put those humans back in our hand and we can recast them in order to protect Kogla. One of the cool ways we can do that is we can do that in response to Kogla's enters trigger. So let's say we cast Kogla. Kogla enters the battlefield and this trigger goes on the stack. Before it resolves, we hold priority and we say we are going to activate Kogla's ability, paying an additional 1 and a green. So we have paid 4 and quadruple green at this point. And we bounce a human we control back to its owner's hand, and Kogla gains indestructible. And then Kogla's enters trigger resolves and fights. It fights one creature that we don't control. So if that fight would have killed Kogla, it doesn't anymore because Kogla's indestructible. Kind of a cool interaction there if we've got a lot of mana we can spend on it, or if, we cast Kogla with Undaunted and we have 3 opponents, then Kogla only casts for triple green. So that's pretty sweet. However, Kogla getting indestructible is not the only effect of this ability. We can also return a human we control to its owner's hand and just give Kogla indestructible as sort of a side effect. The best way we use this is to protect Durnan. Durnan is a 4-mana commander, which is not super cheap, it's fine, but it's not like, he's not a 6-mana commander unless he dies and then we would have to recast him from the command zone. Why not spend 2 mana now on this turn and use Kogla to bounce Durnan to our hand in response to a board wipe, in response to a removal spell, whatever it may be, in response to him dying in combat due to a combat trick, something like that. We put him back in our hand, we recast him, maybe that same turn. So in that turn, we are spending 6 mana, 2 to bounce him and 2 to replay him, rather than 6 mana in the form of 2 to bounce him and 4 to replay him, rather than 4 plus 2 in the commander tax to replay him. But we also got value out of it because we made Kogla indestructible. But we can also bounce him during this turn and then replay him for his regular casting cost on the next turn, rather than have to pay all 6 of those mana at the same time. We can do this as well with any of our other creatures, any of our other humans, that is. So Kogla gives us a number of different cool things we can do with him, or it, rather than just seeing it as this is a big monster that kills one creature and kills artifacts and enchantments when it attacks. Cool. Next up, we have a Quilled Great Worm. This is from Foundations. This is 4 and double green for a worm with trample. It's a 7/7 that says whenever a creature we control deals combat damage during our turn, we put that many 1/1 counters on it. It has to survive, obviously, to get those counters, since this is a triggered ability, and that will go on the stack after state-based actions are checked. But yeah, Quilled Great Worm means that if we attack with Durnan, Durnan doesn't have to deal combat damage to a player. It just says it deals combat damage during our turn. So if we are attacking with Durnan, and Durnan does, let's say, 5 damage, Durnan's going to get 5 1/1 counters on him, and now he's a 10/10. Amazing. So this is just a great way to ensure that if we're making good attacks where we're not likely to lose our creatures, then Quilled Great Worm makes our attacks even more good, even better, for our next turn, since our creatures get huge, especially our commander. And it benefits from it itself, because it doesn't say whenever another creature you control deals combat damage during your turn, because it has trample. It doesn't say it has to do that combat damage to just one thing, or one player, so yeah. In addition, we can cast this card from our graveyard by removing 6 counters from among creatures we control, in addition to paying its other costs. It doesn't say 6 1/1 counters, so if we have other kinds of counters, we could remove them, but if, Durnan has gotten 6 counters, we can just pay 4 and double green, remove 6 of those counters, and get back our Great Worm, then attack with Durnan again, and probably get at least some of those counters back, if not all or more of them. So yeah, this, especially in combination with our Noble Heritage, can really go hard in this deck. Next we have a card I love from New Capenna. It's Sanctuary Warden. A 5/5 Angel Soldier with flying for 4 and double white that enters with 2 shield counters on it. Shield counters do have an inherent mechanical meaning. What they mean is sort of like the way stun counters, when they go on something, if that permanent would untap, it doesn't untap and instead you remove a stun counter. Shield counters work the same way as a protective bubble against damage and destruction. So anytime a creature or permanent, we'll say a creature for simplicity, has a shield counter on it, anytime that creature would receive any amount of damage, even if it's non-lethal, or would be destroyed from like a board wipe or a Doomblade or whatever it may be, instead, that event is replaced by removing a shield counter. So if you have this 5/5 creature and someone lightning bolts it, that's 3 damage that it doesn't get marked on it. Instead, we remove a shield counter. If instead it took 1,000 damage, we don't mark that either, we just remove a shield counter. Any amount of damage, even non-lethal damage, pops one of the shield counter bubbles. Same is true if someone casts murder on it. Instead of being destroyed, we just remove a shield counter. So those are cool and useful for their own reasons. For a 6-mana 5/5 flyer, seems good. This is one of our angels as well, so we can cast it from the top with Sigarda. But also, Sanctuary Warden has a Titan trigger, a triggered ability that happens when it enters or when it attacks. So when it enters or attacks, we may remove a counter from a creature or planeswalker we control. That does not have to be one of these shield counters, but it can be. And if we do that, we draw a card, and we make a 1/1 green and white citizen creature token. So this is a little bit like Diadrene. Even though Diadrene cares about us attacking, doesn't have to be just Diadrene attacking, and requires us to take a counter off of each of 2 creatures in order for us to get a 2/2 and draw a card. Sanctuary Warden, it has to be the thing entering or attacking, but it only requires us to take 1 counter off of a creature or planeswalker, and it comes with counters of its own that we can do in order to get a card and a 1/1. So yeah, pretty nice. That 1/1 is pretty sweet to be able to get more and more of if we happen to have lost our human token that the Lovestruck Beast makes, because the Lovestruck Beast can't attack without us controlling a 1/1. Sanctuary Warden makes 1/1s. Pretty good. Just one more way for us to be able to use the counters we have beyond just the benefit we get from them, particularly the 1/1 counters and their benefit of pumping up whatever creature they're on. Next up is Silverwing Squadron. This is a weird card, originally from Throne of Eldraine, but not from the main set. It was from the Brawl deck precons that are the only Brawl decks Wizards has ever printed in paper. This was, I think, from the Chulane deck, maybe? Yeah, just kind of a weird card, but technically originally from Throne of Eldraine, which is my favorite set, so neat. Silverwing Squadron is 5 and a white for a star human knight with flying and vigilance that has power and toughness, each equal to the number of creatures we control. So it's sort of like the Geist Honored Monk, but it costs a little bit more, and it flies, and it doesn't come with any spirits. So if this is the only creature we have, it's a 1/1 flying vigilance. That's okay, because when it attacks, we make a number of 2/2 white knight creature tokens, each of which also has vigilance, equal to the number of opponents we have. So this sort of does a reverse Durnan for us. Instead of discounting a spell based on a number of opponents, we get a free number of creatures and thereby get a power boost to the Silverwing Squadron for its attack. Like, if this is the only creature we have, and it's a 1/1 flyer, if we've got 3 opponents, we attack one of them with our squadron, and now we make 3 2/2 white knights. Those are not attacking, but we've got them, which means we have a total of 4 creatures, and now this is a flying vigilant 4/4, which is a Serra Angel. So great. This can give us a lot of even better tokens than our 1/1s that we've seen a couple of times, and gives it to us repeatedly, gives us multiples at a time, and of course flies. So yeah, it's a great way for us to get good attack triggers to go along with Durnan. Next up, we have our Beanstalk Giant. This is another adventure creature, also from Throne of Eldraine originally. This is 6 and a green for a star giant with power and toughness, each equal to the number of lands we control. So another one of these. A big Morrow, basically. But normally, we're not casting the Beanstalk Giant from, for its full casting cost right away. We're casting its adventure. It's a sorcery called Fertile Footsteps for 2 and a green that lets us search our library for a basic land, put it on the battlefield, and shuffle. So I know you're thinking, this is just expensive rampant growth, right? It costs 1 more, it just finds us a basic and puts it on the battlefield, and then we shuffle. But notably, Rampant Growth puts that card on the battlefield tapped. So Fertile Footsteps is really us getting a free Rampant Growth, in a way. Or it is sort of like Rampant Growth in that we're paying 1 more mana, but we're getting it back since that basic is coming in untapped. So it's like we've paid 2 to put another land into play, I suppose, if you want to think of it that way. Yeah, a little bit weird, but nice for us as a way to just get that little bit of a mana rebate on its cost and be able to use that mana right away if we want to. Plus, it adds a land to our land count for once we play the Beanstalk Giant for itself. But this is a great example of how Undaunted works with adventure creatures. If we attack with Durnan, look at the top 4, we put Beanstalk Giant into exile, and we know that when we cast it, it will have Undaunted. We can cast Fertile Footsteps with Undaunted. If we have at least 2 opponents, that means we're paying a single green to find a basic and put it on the battlefield untapped, which means we are mana neutral. We've spent 1, and we've gotten a basic into play that we can, so we've got that mana back right away. Then Beanstalk Giant goes to the exile zone, and we can cast it for its full cost, not Undaunted, whenever we want to, which might be right away. If we could have cast Beanstalk Giant by itself, like if we had 7 mana, we can tap 1 to pay for Fertile Footsteps, put that basic into play, untapped, we've still got 7 mana, we can cast the Giant right away. Pretty good. Or, of course, we can just cast this from exile with Undaunted as the Beanstalk Giant. And if we've got 3 opponents, then we're only paying 4 mana for presumably a massive creature. Pretty good, either way. I just really like the way that this acceleration spell interacts with Undaunted. Next up, we have one more adventure creature from originally Throne of Eldraine. This is Realm Cloaked Giant. It is just a 7/7 Vigilant Giant for 5 and double white. So 7 mana 7/7 with Vigilance. That's alright. But it also has an adventure, a sorcery called Cast Off for 3 and double white that destroys all non-giant creatures. Very, very cool. This card is our 1 board wipe in the deck. It can be cast for just double white if we happen to exile Realm Cloaked Giant with Durnan, and we have 3 opponents, so we cast Off, Undaunted, and we're paying 2 mana to kill everything that isn't a giant. How many giants do we have in this deck, though? I think just 2. It's the Realm Cloaked Giant and the Beanstalk Giant. So if we've got our Beanstalk Giant in play, we might Realm Cloaked Giant, pre-combat, attack with our massive giant here, assuming our opponents have no blockers. That's a lot of damage. And then, for 7 more mana, we just put our 7/7 Vigilance into play and we're all set. Cool. Thorn Mammoth, yet another Throne of Eldraine card, is next. This is 5 and double green for a 6/6 elephant with trample that says when it or another creature we control enters, this creature fights up to 1 target creature you don't control. So this is a repeatable removal effect. When it enters, if somebody has a 5/5 that we want to get rid of, we just have the mammoth fight it. If they've got a 2/2, we have it fight that. And then maybe we play another creature, our second creature comes in, and we have the Thorn Mammoth fight something else. As long as it doesn't die in the process, we can keep doing this forever and ever and ever. And it doesn't require us to even have non-token creatures enter. It works as much as we want it to. And if we use Noble Heritage to pump this up, it's now an 8/8. So as long as it doesn't get 8 or more damage marked on it in a turn, we're going to be doing 8 damage every time we have any of our creatures enter to whatever creature we want that we don't control. Maybe we do that again. Maybe we have our Benevolent Hydra in play that's increasing it from 2 counters on something to 3 counters. Now it's a 9/9, and so forth. This can really be supplemented by our counters in the deck. And the fact that we have so many creatures that we're having enter, but also it's just a nice repeatable removal effect that if we cast it Undaunted with 3 opponents, it only costs us 2 and double green, and that's powerful. Next up we have, let me get a little closer. This is Tlinkali Hunter. I don't know what a Tlinkali is. I have played Dungeons & Dragons. Not really sure about this. Yeah, let me know in the comments if you have some good D&D lore to tell me what this thing is. Maybe this is a location. Not sure. Anyway, this is a 7/7 Scorpion Scout with trample for 5 and double green that says once each turn, you may pay 0 generic mana rather than pay the mana cost of a creature spell you cast from exile. So this is very cool because let's say we get our Thorn Mammoth into exile from Durnan's Undaunted trigger. We're still having to pay 4 mana for it, even if we have 3 opponents. If we're down to just 1 opponent, we're only getting 1 discount, and while that does mean it's a 6 mana 6/6 trample with a big effect, so it's a better Colossal Dreadmaw, we might not want to spend that 6 mana. Tlinkali Hunter lets us not. Once per turn, if we're casting something from exile, and it's a creature spell, we get to cast it for just a single, for 0 generic mana. So obviously, if we have, our Beanstalk Giant in exile, we can't cast Fertile Footsteps, that adventure, for 0 mana because we have to cast a creature spell. But we can cast the giant itself for 0 mana, and that's pretty nice. We could also cast Fertile Footsteps from exile, assuming it's been put there with Durnan, with Undaunted, get ourselves a land that comes in untapped, and then the giant goes to exile from the adventure, rather than from Durnan's effect. We then used Tlinkale Hunter to cast it from exile thanks to the sort of being put in the adventure zone for 0. So we've essentially gotten an extra land in play for a single mana. That land's coming tapped, so we're mana neutral. And we've gotten a massive Morrow in play as well for 0 mana. So that's an awful lot of good stuff for us. But we have an adventure on Tlinkale Hunter itself, which is Retrieve Prey. For 1 and a green, we get a sorcery adventure that exiles a creature card from our graveyard, and until the end of our next turn, we can cast that card. So this is sweet. It's a recursion effect that essentially, temporarily, draws us a card from our graveyard. We can either cast it that same turn, or on our next turn, or anywhere in between, assuming we had flash or something, to bring back one of our creatures. A nice way to get Durnan back as well. But we can also do this. We can cast Retrieve Prey, put that card in into exile from our graveyard, and then on this same turn or on our next turn, we cast Tlinkale Hunter, and then whatever card we put into exile from our graveyard with Retrieve Prey, with the Hunter in play, we can cast that spell for no mana. So it does cost us a total of 9 mana, 2 here and 7 here, but we get to, for free, get something back from our graveyard, get a creature back into play by casting it. And that can be pretty sweet for us. Nice. Next up, we've got the Endrace Forerunners. It's the Angry Bacon. This is 5 and triple green for a 7/7 boar with Vigilance, Trample, and Haste, that when it enters, it gives all of our other creatures +2/+2, Vigilance, and Trample until end of turn. So this is a solid card for us to hit with Durnan, put into exile, and then cast with Undaunted on our next turn prior to combat to give everything, including Durnan, +2/+2, Vigilance, and Trample. So this is sort of like a baby Craterhoof for us, if you want to look at it that way. You can run actual Craterhoof in this deck. It would be totally fine to do. I don't typically do that because it's outside the price range of cards that I put in the kind of decks I make for this channel. But also, I think Craterhoof is a little dull. I'll certainly run it sometimes, but I would rather do something that's a little less often seen. So an overrun effect on a body like Endrace Forerunners is pretty fun, especially because it gives everything Vigilance. So it means any of our creatures that don't die in combat right now, which again, +2/+2 means they're less likely to do so, they're going to do a bunch of damage, and then we've got them to hanging around for additional value, for blocking, for whatever else they may be doing for us, after combat. Pretty fun. But maybe even more fun is Ghalta Primal Hunger. This is so fun. It's a 12/12 Legendary Elder Dinosaur for 10 and double green. Very expensive. Or is it? It costs X less to cast, where X is the total power among creatures or total power of creatures we control, and Ghalta has Trample. So we set a 12/12 Trampler that almost never costs 12 mana, sometimes only costs 2 green, especially in our deck that cares about power, and is able to pump up our creatures with a number of effects, but especially with a 2 mana enchantment that's in our command zone, every turn putting 2 counters on one of our creatures. Ghalta can end up being a 2 mana card anyway, even without having to be Undaunted once we've put her into the command zone thanks to Durnan, or not the command zone, but into exile thanks to Durnan. But if we wanted to do that, maybe we get Ghalta out turn 5 post-combat. Maybe we attack with Durnan. Durnan is a 7/7 from having entered on turn 2, gotten 2 counters from Noble Heritage. Then our upkeep on turn 5 gets 2 more counters from Noble Heritage. Durnan's now a 7/7. We attack with Durnan, assuming Durnan doesn't die and finds Ghalta on top. Ghalta is now getting at least 7 mana of discount from Durnan's power, and then -3 additional from Undaunted if we have 3 opponents. So we're playing Ghalta turn 5 after attacking with our 7/7 commander. That's crazy. And just a lot of fun. Ghalta's always a good time, and because 12/12 Trample and nothing else is still pretty threatening, it makes Ghalta a removal magnet, which means maybe our opponents are using removal. Even if they don't want to do it this way, they're forced to use removal on Ghalta, which means they don't have that removal to use on our commander. Pretty sweet. And that covers our Brutes section. We're going to go now to a bit of a smaller section that talks about all of our other sources of counters beyond just our Noble Heritage. So we've seen the Benevolent Hydra. We can tap it and remove a counter from it to put a counter on another creature we control, but that's affected by its Hardened Scales effect, so it's really 2 counters on another creature we control. Next up, we have Erdnan, which is like Durnan. I think it's actually an anagram of Durnan. So yeah, enjoy that little bit of trivia. This Dromoka warrior from Foundation's Jumpstart. 1 and a white for a 1/1 legendary human warrior, just like Durnan, that says when Erdnan enters, we put a 1/1 counter on target creature. So Erdnan just comes with a counter that we could put on Erdnan themselves. We could make this a 2-mana 2/2, and that's pretty alright. And it says, whenever we attack, target attacking creature with a +1/+1 counter on it gains first strike until end of turn, and if that creature has 2 or more +1/+1 counters on it, it gains double strike until end of turn instead. So this is really here to be a 2-mana way to ensure our commander is always a double striker, because it only works for a single attacking creature whenever we attack. But that creature is going to either get first strike, or thanks to Noble Heritage putting 2 counters on something, likely give it double strike every time. And so we can put this on Durnan. We don't get 2 triggers since Durnan's got an attack trigger rather than a damage trigger, but we are doing double damage, and we're making it so our opponents are maybe a little less likely to block if they don't want to just lose their creature without trading, since half of that damage is first strike damage. And if we want, maybe this is turn 2 that we're playing Erdnan, we put the counter on Erdnan. Turn 3, we're playing our Noble Heritage while we're waiting to cast our commander the next turn, but we can attack with Erdnan, and Erdnan is a 2/2 first strike, and that's not nothing either. So yeah, pretty good. Next we have Summon Fenrir. This is a weird saga creature. It's one of these ones that they introduced in the Final Fantasy set, but it's one that I think is maybe my favorite of the saga creatures. So this is a saga enchantment. It's also a wolf creature, but we'll talk about that in a moment. If you haven't seen sagas before, here's how they work. This is an enchantment that when it enters and at the start of our first main phase, it gets a lore counter on it, and then triggers whichever chapter ability it has equal to the number of lore counters that it has if it hasn't triggered those already, I guess. Or rather, just equal to the number of lore counters it now has on it. And then, after the last chapter ability has resolved, we sacrifice the saga. So we're going to get this in play for 3 turns. The turn we cast it, the next turn, we get another ability, and then the turn after that, start of our first main phase, we get its 3rd ability, and once that's resolved, we sacrifice this saga creature. So we only get it in play for a few turns, but it does good work for us in the meantime. So this is how it works. It is 2 and a green. For a 3/2 creature, it is a creature. So during this turn, we're going to be able to attack with it if we want, and we can block with it in between any of these turns. So again, 2 and a green for a 3/2 Saga Wolf. When it first comes in, we get the Crescent Fang ability. We get to search our library for a basic, put it on the battlefield tapped, and shuffle. So a free Rampant Growth attached to this 3/2 creature. That's all right. Then the next turn's first main phase starts, and we get Heavenward Howl. When we next cast a creature spell this turn, that creature enters with an additional 1/1 counter on it. That doesn't mean that every creature we cast that turn gets a counter on it when it enters. It means that only the first creature we cast that turn comes in with a counter on it. But it will enter with that counter. This is not a delayed trigger, it just resolves and creates a replacement effect with that creature entering with the counter on it. That will be affected, however, by any kind of Hardened Scales effects like Benevolent Hydra has, so keep that in mind. And on its last turn being around, not the turn after we cast it, but the turn after that, start of our first main phase, we get this Ecliptic Growl. We draw a card if we control a creature with the greatest power or tied for the greatest power. That means among all creatures on the battlefield. So pretty likely that this gets sacrificed right after it replaces itself by drawing us a card, since we often have, like I mentioned, Durnan is a 7/7. The first turn he attacks. So that's turn 5. So even if we cast this on turn 3, we get to turn 5, and it's pretty likely that Durnan's a 7/7, and that might be the biggest creature on the battlefield. So yeah, pretty good. Next up is another Final Fantasy card. This is from the Commander product. It's Trommel Seymour's Butler. I really like this card. This is 2 and a green for a 2/3 legendary Elf Advisor that says each other non-token creature we control enters with an additional 1/1 counter on it. So similar to that second Summon Fenrir chapter, these creatures are going to be entering with that counter on them that is affected by Hardened Scales type effects like Benevolent Hydra, but it just means that everything's going to come in with a 1/1 counter, which is pretty sweet. If this is our turn 3 play and we get Durnan out on turn 4, Durnan's going to come in entering as a 4/4 because it comes in with that 1/1 counter, which means it will trigger, Garruk's Uprising type effects. And then we get the trigger off of Inspiring Leader, or not Inspiring Leader, but Noble Heritage, assuming that's already in play, and we get to put 2 more counters on Durnan, making him a 6/6. Pretty good. And Trommel says, if we pay 1 and tap him, we can proliferate a number of times equal to the number of non-token creatures that we control that entered this turn. Proliferating means we choose any number of permanents and or players. We don't have to control them, and they don't have to be us, but they can be. And then we give each of those permanents and players an extra counter of each kind that they already have. I want to be clear about that. If we have a creature, or if an opponent has a creature that has 1/1 counters on it and stun counters, as an example, if we proliferate that creature, it gets an additional 1/1 counter and an additional stun counter. We don't get to pick and choose the types of counters, we only get to pick and choose which permanents and players we're proliferating on. Similarly, if an opponent has a poison counter and an experience counter, and we proliferate them, they will get another poison counter, but they'll also get another experience counter. So proliferate is pretty strong, especially if we get to do the thing I talked about in the heart of the deck, where we cast a creature spell during our first main phase, attack with Durnan, put a creature into exile, and then cast it Undaunted during our second main phase. Both of those creatures, if Trommel was already in play, are going to come in with a 1/1 counter on them. Then we only spend 1 mana and tap Trommel, and we proliferate twice, since we've had 2 non-token creatures enter that turn, which means both of those creatures are going to get an extra 1/1 counter each of those times we proliferate, as will anything else that we have that we choose to proliferate, like our commander, with all of those Noble Heritage counters that he will have gotten on him. Great. We've seen the Forgotten Ancient. It gains a 1/1 counter every time anyone casts any spell, and then during our upkeep we can put those counters on other creatures if we wish. Next we have Seasoned Dungeoneer. This is CZ DZ. This is 3 and a white for a 3/4 human warrior that when it enters, we take the initiative. I'm going to talk about what that means in just a moment, because we've got more to deal with CZDZ. They say whenever we attack, target attacking cleric, rogue, warrior, or wizard gains protection from creatures until end of turn. Protection, as you remember, protects from debt. That is our acronym. It's damage, attachments, which is enchantments and equipment, blocking, and targeting. So if we attack, it doesn't have to be with Seasoned Dungeoneer, and we attack with Durnan. Durnan is a warrior, so we can give Durnan protection from creatures until end of turn, meaning Durnan cannot be targeted by effects from creatures, Durnan cannot be damaged by creatures, Durnan could not be, equipped or enchanted by creatures, which is not really a thing, but Durnan also can't be blocked by creatures, which means Seasoned Dungeoneer essentially says Durnan becomes unblockable. And that's amazing. We can win with commander damage with that pretty easily. But that's not the only thing that happens when we attack with Seasoned Dungeoneer in play. Not only does one of our party members gain protection from creatures until end of turn, it also explores. Why does it explore? Because it's going into the dungeon? I guess so. Explore is an Ixalan mechanic that says we reveal the top card of our library. We show it to everyone. If it's a land, it goes to our hand. Otherwise, we get to put a counter on the creature that explored, and we can either put that card back on top of our library, or we can put it in our graveyard. So essentially it means this. Show everyone the top card, and if it's a land, it goes into your hand. Otherwise, you may surveil that card. Either put it back or put it in your graveyard, and if you're surveilling it, quote unquote, you put a 1/1 counter on the creature that explored. So a weird mechanic, but Explore plays well, and is easy to understand after you've done it a few times. So yeah, giving our commander the ability to get an extra counter, give us a little card selection that will happen at the same time our commander's attacking, so we can do this prior to resolving Durnan's own attack trigger to get something off the top of our library, or keep it on the top of our library, or if it's a land, just draw it, which means that's one fewer cards that Durnan can miss on. In addition to putting a counter on Durnan if it wasn't a land, and all that is on top of Durnan gaining protection from creatures until end of turn. so we can't even be blocked. That's all amazing. That's what CZDZ does for us, but also when it enters, we take the initiative. What is the initiative? Well, I'm going to tell you. The initiative is a little bit of a complicated mechanic, similar to the monarchy, if you're familiar with that. We'll talk about it here. The initiative is this. It's a status that a player has. Whenever you take the initiative, and at the beginning of your upkeep, if you have the initiative, you venture into the Undercity, which is this dungeon. We'll talk about that in a moment. So the idea is the initiative lets you do a thing, which is venturing into the Undercity, when you take it, and at the beginning of your upkeep if you have it. The way you take the initiative is either by playing a permanent that says when this enters you take the initiative, or if you don't have it, if you do combat damage to a player that does have it, you take the initiative. So whenever one or more creatures a player controls deal combat damage to someone with the initiative, that player will take the initiative. And remember, when you take the initiative, either by playing a card that says you take the initiative, or by taking it by doing combat damage to someone that has the initiative, that moment that you take it, you will venture into the Undercity, as well as at the start of your upkeep, if no one has taken it from you before you get to that point. What is venturing into the Undercity? Well, it is, look at this little dungeon. You put a counter, a little marker rather, for yourself on the secret entrance, and you get to do what the secret entrance says, which is Lay of the Land. You search your library for a basic, put it in your hand after revealing it, and then shuffle. Then, every other turn, you venture into the Undercity, which is, again, when you take the initiative from someone, or at the beginning of your upkeep if you have the initiative, you will move to the next room. You get to choose which room you go to. You can't go sideways, you can't go backwards, and you have to go to a room that is connected to the room you're in. So secret entrance will either take you to the Lost Well or the Forge. But when that happens, you get to do the things. Lost Well scries 2, Forge puts 2 counters on a target creature. Oftentimes, people are going to take a pretty similar path through this. You see Secret Entrance, Forge, Arena, Archives, Throne of the Dead 3 pretty often, but there's lots of cool value you get from this, and it just causes the game to move a little faster. Players are having to figure out where they want to go in the Undercity, but it does give you value for just going into the Undercity at all, so it encourages players to attack each other and try and get that initiative from each other. I think the Monarch is definitely a more clean effect, but this mechanic was introduced in Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate, so we might as well have some of it. And I know you're thinking, well, what if I go to the last room and then I take the initiative again, or I have to venture into the Undercity because I kept the initiative till my next turn? Well, you just start at the top again. This is the Undercity. It's not Under Mountain, which is where Durnan is from. Or it's sort of like his inn, the Yawning portal, sits on top of the portal to the Under Mountain. But I think of this as sort of like, it's our nod to that. So yeah, that is a lot to talk about. But that is what Seasoned Dungeoneer does for us. CCDZ is very powerful. There's a reason it's a $5.50 card, and it's totally worth it in this deck, even if all it did was just make Durnan unblockable all the time. But being able to also draw us a card, since it's the first time we take the initiative and venture into the Undercity, we get to find ourselves a basic and put it in our hand. That's like drawing a card. And the Explore effect that we get off of Seasoned Dungeoneer when we attack, it's just very strong. So yeah, all of that is pretty good. Next up is Shalai, Voice of Plenty. I love this card, originally from Dominaria 2018. Beautiful, beautiful character, and gorgeous Victor Adame-Minga's art. Just really like Shalai. This is a 3/4 legendary angel for 3 and a white that flies and gives us, all of our planeswalkers, of which we don't have any, and all of our other creatures, hexproof. So this does a pretty good impression of Sigarda, also giving us hexproof, and any planeswalkers that we happen upon somehow. It's also the case that, speaking of Sigarda, we can play Shalai off the top with Sigarda, since Shalai is an angel. Pretty good. And if we ever have mana lying around, which sometimes we might, we can pay 4 and double green to put a 1/1 counter on each creature we control, which includes Shalai herself. Pretty sweet. That is Shalai. We've seen Agonisaur Rex. It's in this section because if we cycle it, we put 2 1/1 counters on up to 1 target creature or vehicle, and then that gains trample and indestructible until end of turn. If I didn't mention it before, I don't remember if I did, Agonisaur Rex does not say creature or vehicle you control, so we can use this politically to protect an opponent's creature with indestructible to give that creature trample and a little power boost. Maybe it's already attacking a different opponent of ours, so we want to give them, a nice boost there. But usually we're using this to protect our commander. We've got Carvanista helping us out by every time it attacks, we put a 1/1 counter on each of our humans. And Quilled Great Worm lets all of our creatures get a 1/1 counter for each damage they deal whenever they deal combat damage during our turn. Pretty good. That is our counters section. I have one more little bit that I want us to go through, and it is our extras here. We've already seen Benevolent Hydra, which has an effect that is hardened scales. It means every time we would put any number of 1/1 counters on something, we put an extra one in addition. That's pretty good. We've also got Kami of Whispered Hopes, which does the same thing. It's 2 and a green for a 1/1 spirit that says if one or more 1/1 counters would be put on a permanent we control. It does not say, like Benevolent Hydra, on another creature you control. It's any permanent, including Kami of Whispered Hopes that we control. We put that many +1/+1/+1 counters on that permanent instead. So I know you're thinking, well, what if we have both of these in play? Well, then we put +2. So if we were to get a counter on Kami of Whispered Hopes, its replacement effect will make that counter into 2. Benevolent Hydras would make those 2 into 3. If we were to put a counter on Benevolent Hydra, it only gets an extra 1, because its own effect doesn't affect itself, because it only says on another creature. But if we have both, then that's 2 extra counters on anything other than the Benevolent Hydra that we're putting those counters on, creature-wise at least. That's pretty good. The Kami, however, can get counters on itself because it taps to add an amount of mana of any one color equal to its power. So if we put a single counter on the Kami, it will see that, and it will instead put 2 counters on itself, and now it taps for 3 mana. That's pretty solid. If we target this during our upkeep, or when Durnan enters with Noble Heritage, we put 2 counters on it, but it sees those 2 counters and adds 1, and now it's a 4 mana creature, which helps our effects that care about power of 4 or greater, at least ones that aren't about, enters triggers, since it didn't enter that way. And we can tap it for a total of 4 mana. That seems good. So yeah, there are more of these types of cards, including some counter doubling effects, in the considering section at the bottom of the Moxfield page, which I encourage you to look at if you're interested. But I didn't feel like it was so necessary, since counters are part of our game plan, but they're not an enormous part of it. It's mostly just big creatures. So yeah, being able to have these is a great supplement to what we're doing. But if you want to go harder with that, like I mentioned, that considering section is a great place to look to get some inspiration. So yeah, that covers pretty much all of our game plan. And oh hey, did you just like the video? Nice, I appreciate that. Thank you for liking it. Yeah, I'm just kidding. You don't have to like it if you don't want to. I appreciate you being here either way. Thanks for joining me. So before we move on to our supplemental sections, I want to talk some more about these support categories for us. We're going to start with our card advantage section. As usual, I have tagged this as draw. It doesn't necessarily mean that all these cards do the draw a card action. They just give us access to more cards. For example, Bushwhack is a single green for a sorcery that lets us either search our library for a basic land, reveal it, put it in our hand, and shuffle, so Lay of the Land, or target creature you control fights target creature you don't control. We find a bush, or we whack something. Pretty solid, helps us early on by finding us lands when we need it, or late on if we're hurting for lands. And then later on, once we've got big creatures, we can use this as a single mana sorcery speed removal spell. Great. Bramble Familiar is next. This is 2 mana. It's 1 and a green for a 2/2 elemental raccoon that taps for green, or lets us pay 1 and a green and tap and discard a card to bounce it to our hand, which can protect it. That's one thing, but it's not really the reason we're using this effect. We'll talk about that in a moment. This is just a sweet Wilds of Eldraine adventure creature. Its adventure is huge compared to it, which is not something we've seen yet. This is Fetch Quest, a sorcery for 5 and double green that lets us mill 7 cards and then put a creature, enchantment, or land from among the milled cards onto the battlefield. So this can accelerate us by putting a land into play, or we just let it accelerate us by it being a mana dork if we need it to. But what's nice is, this is the best example of a card, I think best example in our deck, of a card that if we were to attack with Durnan, look at the top 4, and exile one of our creature cards, we can then cast that card undaunted from exile. If we cast Fetch Quest with 3 opponents, we're paying 2 and double green to mill 7 and put the best creature we find, or maybe an enchantment or land, directly into play. So we're not casting it, it's just coming into play, but we do have a few when a creature you control enters or a non-token creature enters triggers, as well as we're just getting that best creature into play without having to cast it for more than just the 4 we cast for Fetch Quest, which may be cheaper than that creature. It may not be, depending on what Undaunted would have done for that creature, but it does give us better selection since we're looking at 7 full cards in doing so. And then Fetch Quest, after we cast it, puts Bramble Familiar in the exile zone, and we can cast it for just 1 and a green, and we get our little raccoon that taps for green. And if we want, we can pay 1 and a green, tap the familiar, and discard a card to bounce the familiar, and now that it's in our hand, we can cast Fetch Quest, for full price if we want to. Just a nice option for us with the familiar. But usually in this deck, what we're doing with the Bramble Familiar is either drawing it early game, and so it comes down as a mana dork, or seeing it on the top with a Durnan trigger and choosing to exile it when we have 3 opponents so that we can Fetch Quest for much cheaper. Pretty fun. Next up, we've seen Diadrain. Diadrain does draw us a card and make us a robot whenever we attack and we remove a 1/1 counter from each of 2 creatures we control. Hunter's Talent is next. This is a card that more and more I've been putting in a bunch of my green decks. I just think it does a lot for us. This is it's 1 and a green for a class enchantment. Class enchantments have 1 ability, and then at sorcery speed, we can pay some mana to level them up to level 2, which gives them 2 abilities. And then at level 2, we can, at sorcery speed, pay some more mana to level it up to level 3, and it has all of the text on it. So that's how we get it. It does cost us more incremental mana, but we're paying it on separate turns, so it works well for us. Hunter's Talent for 1 and a green at its first chapter has a triggered ability. When it enters, one of our creatures deals damage equal to its power to target creature we don't control. This is just a Rabid Bite at sorcery speed, which is totally fine in a deck that has a whole bunch of big creatures and creatures that get bigger. This is just solid removal. Then at level 2, for 1 and a green, whenever we attack, target attacking creature gets +1/+0 and trample until end of turn. This can help out Durnan, giving him trample, making him a little bit evasive, more likely to do damage to our opponents, and because he has trample, maybe our opponents are less likely to block him because they know that they can't chump block him. It's an option. And at level 3, for 3 and a green, at the beginning of your end step, if you control a creature power 4 or greater, draw a card. So a nice sort of Colossal Majesty that triggers during our end step can be pretty good for us. Yeah, very nice. Next up is Scholar of New Horizons. I really like this card and I really want them to reprint it because I started playing in the 90s, and so I'm very familiar with the old border art on Magic cards, but I would like to see a more modern frame on this thing, even though beautiful Randy Vargas art in the art frame. Yeah, so Scholar of New Horizons is a 1/1, again, helps us out with our Lovestruck Beast, maybe, for 1 and a white. It's a human scout, and it enters with a 1/1 counter on it, so maybe it doesn't help immediately. But we can tap it and remove a counter from a permanent we control. Doesn't have to be a creature, doesn't have to be this creature, and doesn't have to be a 1/1 counter. Any counter from a permanent we control, and we get to search our library for a Plains card and reveal it. And if an opponent controls more land than us, we put that card on the battlefield tapped, and if we don't put it on the battlefield, we put it in our hand and then we shuffle. So either this is a catch-up mechanic, meaning if we're behind on lands, then we get a land in play. If we're not behind on lands, we get a card in hand. It's a land that we can then play for our land drop this turn, maybe. So that is a solid way of drawing that card, in addition to it being a Plains card, not a basic Plains card. So we can, again, find one of our dual-typed lands, and we get a Plains Forest, and if it comes in tapped, or comes in tapped next turn because we played it and it's a tap land, or maybe we're playing it and it comes in untapped this turn or next turn, whatever it may be, we're helping ourselves out with our green mana, which is our primary color in this deck, as well as our white mana. It's also cool that this requires us to take a counter off a permanent we control. It doesn't have to just be that 1/1 counter it comes with. If we eat that counter, it's now online to help our Lovestruck Beast. If we eat any other counters among all of the many counters we're putting on things, we get to continually do this every turn cycle. Just keep tapping it, eating a counter, and turning that counter into a card in play or a card in hand. It's going to be a Plains every time, but that's totally fine, because that could mean we end up getting 4 or 5, 6 even different cards in play or in hand from the Scholar of New Horizons over the course of the game it's in play. We might even get more than that. So yeah, this is yet another way, similar to Diadrain and similar to our New Capenna Angel, or Angel Sanctuary Warden, there you go. That lets us use the counters we have in this deck for things other than just pumping up the creatures that they're on. Pretty great. Next up, we have Garruk's Uprising, a classic. You don't have to run the Wilds of Eldraine Enchanting Tales printing, but I love Eldraine, so that's what we're doing here. Garruk's Uprising is an enchantment for 2 and a green that does 3 things. One thing is it gives all of our creatures trample, just all the time. Just not even necessarily only when they're attacking, although that's the only time it's really relevant. So yeah, all of our creatures having trample all the time is pretty good. It also replaces itself when it enters if we control a creature power 4 or greater, then we get to draw a card. So it rewards us for having a ferocious creature and, puts another card in our hand. But what if we have Garruk's Uprising in play when we have a ferocious creature enter? Well, whenever a creature we control with power 4 or greater enters, we draw a card. So in this deck, this can be a true value engine for us, giving us more and more and more cards over the course of the game while giving all of our creatures trample. Great. Next, we have Lauren of the Third Path. This is my favorite Reclamation Sage and a beautiful, beautiful story behind Lauren. If you want to hear about that story, check out the video's description for a link to my Feldon of the Third Path deck that I made for the holidays in 2025. I sort of summarized that story at the start of the video, so even if you're not interested in the deck, you'll be able to hear about Lauren's story. So, Lauren is a 2/1 legendary human artificer for 2 and a white. She has vigilance, and when she enters, we destroy up to 1 target artifact or enchantment. So a free disenchant when she enters, that's pretty good. And we can tap her, and we and target opponent each draw a card. Another nice political way for us to play, but at the very least, we give the card to the opponent we think is going to be able to use it least effectively against us, and we get a card. Maybe we do this on an opponent's turn, even the end step of the opponent to our right, so it's less effective for anyone else. We get more access to that card earliest. Nice. Also, for if you really like lore, this is the Golgothian Silex, the thing that Urza detonates to defeat Mishra in the Brothers' War. It starts the Ice Age, makes Urza into a planeswalker, sets off a cascade of events that are truly terrible in Magic's history, but maybe necessary. Some of them definitely weren't necessary, but yeah, cool lore stuff. We've seen Summon Fenrir. Summon Fenrir draws us a card with its 3rd chapter ability. If, when that ability resolves, we controlled the creature with the greatest power on the battlefield or tied for it. CCDC draws us a card when we take the initiative when it first enters, because it finds us a land and puts it in hand, as well as causing that cleric, rogue, warrior, or wizard that we're attacking with, whenever we attack, to explore, which can give us card advantage in the form of if we find a land on top of our library, we put it in our hand. Sigarda lets us look at the top card of our library at any time and cast Angels and Humans off the top of our library. We have a not insignificant number of those in the deck, so we're able to get some of them off the top. Angelic Sellsword, if it attacks while it has power 6 or greater, draws us a card. Brawlios lets us Growth Spiral when it attacks, letting us draw and then put a land from our hand onto the battlefield. I guess it's not actually Growth Spiral, silly me, because it doesn't say put that land... Oh no, it is Growth Spiral. Growth Spiral doesn't put it into play tapped. Yeah, pardon me. Garruk's Uprising, or Garruk's Pack Leader, good grief, draws us a card whenever we have any creature we control with power 3 or greater enter. Sanctuary Warden draws us a card when it enters or attacks if we remove a counter from a creature or planeswalker we control, in addition to making us a 1/1 citizen. And we also have Glorious Sunrise, which is a sweet card from Crimson Vow that I don't get to put in a lot of decks, and I'm always excited when I do. It seems like a 5-mana do-nothing enchantment in this deck, but it actually helps us quite a bit because it has a beginning of combat trigger every turn. This is 3 and double green for an enchantment that says at the beginning of combat on your turn, choose, and either all of your creatures get +1/+1 and trample until end of turn. One of your lands now gains the ability until end of turn to tap for triple green. Draw a card if you control a creature power 3 or greater, or just gain 3 life. In this deck, we are almost never doing this one because we want to be able to draw cards. It's so easy to do. We want to be able to accelerate. Sometimes it's the difference between playing something post-combat, whether it's Undaunted or not, and not doing it, or just pumping up our whole team and giving them evasion. That sounds great. Glorious Sunrise does a lot for us. Finally, we've seen the Sanctuary Warden. I've already talked about it. So that covers our card advantage section. Let's go now to our acceleration section. If I can spell the word ramp. Again, just tagged as a shorthand here as ramp. So of course we're running Soul Ring. It costs 1 generic, taps for 2 colorless. It is an artifact. It's so powerful. Yeah, put it in your deck. You want this. Similar is Arcane Signet, 2 generic for an artifact that taps for 1 mana of any color in your commander's color identity. So in this deck, white or green. Helps us out as a 2 mana untapped rock that makes both of our colors. Yes, we want this. We've seen the Bramble Familiar. It can tap for green as its raccoon self. We're running Farseek as well. 1 and a green for a sorcery that lets us search our library for a plains, island, swamp, or mountain card, put it in the battlefield tapped, and shuffle. It does not say basic, and so even though we don't have any islands, swamps, or mountains, we do have some plains, so we can find either a basic plains or one of our dual-typed plains, and even though it comes in tapped, this is just our rampant growth for the deck. So it'll untap and give us access, if it's a dual-type land, to both white and green mana. We see the Scholar of New Horizons. It can put a land into play tapped from our library rather than just putting it in our hand, depending on whether or not we are behind on lands compared to our other opponents. That's good. Selesnya Signet is a 2 mana artifact that if we pay 1 and tap it, it makes a green and a white mana. So we're tapping 2 mana sources for 2 mana, whatever we're tapping to pay this cost and the Signet itself, and it's filtering that mana into our 2 colors, which is pretty solid for us. Most of the time, we are going to want 1 or sometimes both of those colors. Sometimes this doesn't give us exactly what we need if we have like a card that requires triple green or something, but it can be pretty nice for us, especially as an untapped 2 mana rock. So yeah, we're running that. Even better, however, is our Talisman of Unity. 2 generic for an artifact that taps for colorless, or can tap for white or green if we let it do a damage to us. And the way I like to describe these is, we always do. Because if you need mana from this, you can just tap it for colorless. If you need colored mana, why would you need colored mana unless it's the difference between you casting a spell or not? And if it's the difference between being able to cast a spell or not being able to cast it, then it's the same as saying, would you pay a life in order to cast an extra spell this turn? I would do that every turn. I would do that 6, 7, or 8 times during a game, because that means I'm down 6, 7, or 8 life, but I've also cast 6, 7, or 8 additional spells that I otherwise wouldn't have been able to cast, and the person who tends to cast the most spells tends to do the best in the game. So it's always worth it to pay the life, unless of course we're just down to the wire on life, at which point probably it's late enough in the game that we don't need colored mana from this. We can just tap it for colorless. Sweet. Next we have Gwenna, Eyes of Gaia. This is a Brothers War card that is so cool. 2/3 for a legendary, it is a 2/3 legendary Elf Druid Scout for 2 and a green that taps for 2 mana in any combination of colors, but we can only use those colors to cast creature spells or activate abilities of creature sources. Most of the time, being able to tap for 2 mana that's only for creatures is great in this deck. Sometimes we get a little stuck if we have to, cast an enchantment or an artifact or something, but usually by the time that happens, we're using Gwenna to cast our creatures that we are putting in exile with Durnan, and we're using our other mana to cast those non-creature spells. So it doesn't typically get in the way of us, this restriction on the mana. In addition, whenever we cast a creature spell power 5 or greater, we put a 1/1 counter on Gwenna and untap it. That means we get to tap it again for additional mana if we want to, that same turn. Plus, a counter on Gwenna can't hurt, especially if we have like a Benevolent Hydra or a Kami of Whispered Hopes in play, and those are more than 1 counter. Neat. Speaking of the Kami, we've got Kami of Whispered Hopes right here. Taps for mana of any color, or X mana of any color, where X is its power. Summon Fenrir's first chapter ability is Rampant Growth. Earth King lets us Rampant Growth whenever we attack with any number of creatures power 4 or greater, and we Rampant Growth for each creature power 4 or greater that's attacking. Brawlios attacks, lets us draw a card and put a land from our hand on the battlefield. Glorious Sunrise can make one of our lands until end of turn, tap for triple green. Karametra lets us tutor up a forest or plains card onto the battlefield tapped every time we cast a creature spell. Beanstalk Giant lets us find a land, a basic land, and put it on the battlefield untapped when we cast its Fertile Footsteps adventure. And Tlinkali Hunter can let us cast spells from exile, creature spells that is, for 0 generic mana once each turn. So that's a good ramp for us. But that's not the only way of dealing with our mana in this deck, because we have a discount section. We've seen both of these cards already. Goreclaw discounts all of our creature spells that have power 4 or greater by 2 generic, and Hamza discounts all of our creature spells by 1 generic per creature we control already that has a 1/1 counter on it, or any number of 1/1 counters on it, and Hamza itself has that discount. So a pretty nice way to get our stuff out a little faster that isn't just straight up ramp. So that covers our discount section. let's go now to our removal section, which is what I like to call the interaction section. So Bushwhack can have one of our creatures fight a creature we don't control. Path to Exile and Swords to Plowshares, I often like to say, are the same card with one difference. They are both a single white mana for an instant that exiles a target creature and gives that creature's controller a little kickback. Swords to Plowshares lets that creature's controller gain life equal to the creature's power, and Path to Exile lets that creature's controller rampant growth. They search for a basic, put it on the battlefield tapped, and shuffle. So both of these are extremely powerful. Single mana, instant speed, unconditional exile effects for creatures. If you're running a white deck, you probably should be running both of these. They're just too efficient and good to deny. Barroom Brawl is next. This card, it's questionable whether this actually belongs in this deck, but it's so flavorful for an Innkeeper commander and it's from our Baldur's Gate set that I said, why not? Let's do something a little fun. This is 1 and a green for a sorcery that says target creature you control fights target creature the opponent to your left controls. Then that player may copy the spell and may choose new targets for the copy. So this is just, we can only do damage to one specific opponent's creatures. But usually most of the time, our creatures are going to be bigger than everyone else's creatures. So if our opponent wants, they can say, well, you probably killed one of my creatures, but I can kill one of my opponent to my left's creatures, so I will copy Barroom Brawl, and they'll do that. And that opponent might say, oh no, I lost one of my creatures, but my opponent to the left, which remember, if you're keeping track, that's our opponent to our right. If our opponent across the table from us wants to have one of their creatures fight the creature from the opponent to our right, they can do that too. And then that opponent gets to copy it as well, and maybe they try and kill one of our creatures. And if they do, we get to copy it. And it just keeps going until someone does not copy the spell. It's a really, really fun fight effect. Even if all it does is just sorcery speed, 2 mana, one of our things fights the person to our left's thing, one of our opponent to the left's things, and then the opponent to the left doesn't do it, that's still fine. 2 mana removal spell. So okay, but it's just flavorful and it ends up being a lot of fun. Look at how much fun several people at this table are having. Maybe not everyone. So, I don't know if this person's actually happy about it. Anyway, also it's very clear, based from the flavor text, these players are playing a game called 3 Dragon Ante, which is a Forgotten Realms card game in the fiction. Wizards of the Coast made a 3 Dragon Ante purchasable game many, many years ago, and it's pretty fun. Yeah, just a little note there for you. All right, next up is Collective Resistance. 1 and a green for an instant with Escalate for a green, which lets us choose one or more modes, and we have to pay an additional green for each mode we choose beyond the first. So we can use this to destroy an artifact, destroy an enchantment, or give a creature hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. Meaning we can use this for 2 mana to just protect our commander. We can use it as naturalize, basically. Or we can pay an extra green, hit an artifact and an enchantment, or blow up an enchantment and make our commander indestructible, or some other creature. It does not have to be a creature we control, like I say. Or it can be 1 and triple green to do all 3, all at instant speed. Pretty flexible and solid for us. Hunter's Talent's first chapter is a Rapid Bite effect at sorcery speed, so that's good interaction. Now it's time for my speech about Emergency Eject. So in white and green decks, there are these couple of spells called Beast Within or Generous Gift. They are the same spell, except one is 2 and a green, and the second is 2 and a white. They both just say, destroy target permanent, its controller creates a 3/3 green elephant creature token, or a 3/3 green beast creature token if it's Beast Within. But either way, it's just blow up a permanent, and that permanent's controller gets a 3/3 vanilla creature. That's fine. But at the tables that my decks typically see play at, this kind of power level of a deck usually is being played by a pod of players that don't want to see any kind of mana denial at all in their deck. They don't want, especially mass land destruction is one thing. Some people just don't want their lands getting messed with at all. And that's fine. Not everyone wants that experience in Commander or in Magic. So if you're running Beast Within, but you're not intending to blow up lands with it, why not just run a spell that costs the same and doesn't hit lands? That gives them a kickback that is, not as good as a 3/3 creature. So you could play Generous Gift or Beast Within. Generous Gift, like I mentioned, is 2 and a white to destroy a permanent and they get a 3/3. Or you could run Stroke of Midnight from Wilds of Eldraine, which is 2 and a white that destroys a non-land permanent and its controller gets a 1/1. So that's even better than running Generous Gift if you're not planning to use Generous Gift to destroy lands. Since they're the opponent whose whose permanent you destroyed does not get a 3/3 creature, they get a 1/1. And all of that is just a lead up for me to say, if you're going to run that, you might as well run Emergency Eject instead. I think this is better than all of these cards, not like in terms of power, since Generous Gift and Beast Within can of course hit lands. But if you're not planning to hit a land, why give your opponent a creature at all? Instead, for 2 and a white, you can have an instant that destroys a non-land permanent, so already we're just doing Stroke of Midnight, and its controller creates a Lander token. Lander tokens are Wayfarer's Baubles. They are an artifact that if we pay 2, tap and sack it, they get to search your library for a basic and put it on the battlefield tapped and shuffle. They just get 2 Rampant Growth. So they're paying 2 and cracking this to Rampant Growth, so they're paying 2 for a Rampant Growth, so they're getting a free Rampant Growth, or they're getting a Rampant Growth that they have to pay for. It's not free. We're saying, we're going to blow up any of your permanents that isn't the land, and instead, you have the opportunity to Rampant Growth whenever you feel like it. That's so much worse than a 1 mana, or than a 1/1 creature, because they can use that creature immediately for things. Obviously, having an artifact, having a token, having the ability to ramp, all of those things are good, but they're probably not nearly as good as whatever we blew up. And again, if we're not planning to hit a land with it, then it's fine. Think about Path to Exile. It's 1 mana, but it only hits creatures and it gives them the land for free. Emergency Eject, obviously not as good, but it can hit any non-land permanent, and it makes them pay for that land, and they're paying the 2 mana that we're paying in addition to what we would have paid for Path to Exile. I know it's Destroy versus Exile. Obviously, they're not really comparable, but just look at it from this perspective. I just think Emergency Eject is a sweet card and is underplayed in Commander. I hope you enjoyed that, because you won't get the last few minutes of your life back. We've seen Lauren of the Third Path. She enters and she destroys an artifact or enchantment. We've seen Kogla. Kogla attacks and destroys an artifact or enchantment a defending player controls, but also enters and fights a creature that we don't control. Good interaction both ways. And Thorn Mammoth will fight something we don't control every time it or another creature enters under our control if we want it to, because it says up to 1. We also have Halana, Kessig Ranger. Halana is part of the classic pair Halana and Elena partners, which are just really cool characters in the story. And if you want to check out this video's description, you will be able to see a Halana and Elena deck that I made last month for Pride. It's not just them, it's also Kaineo Satira of Meletus, the Gay Kings from Theros, in a deck called Magic is for Everyone. So anyway, just check that out because it's a pretty fun deck. Anyway, Halana on her own is Halana Kessig Ranger. She is a 3/4 legendary human archer ranger for 3 and a green. Interestingly, she's a human archer ranger, and it just says human archer here because the ranger creature type didn't exist when Commander Legends was first printed. It came out when Adventures in the Forgotten Realms was printed, which is the first D&D set. This is Baldur's Gate deck, which is the second D&D set. Just kind of interesting to see that she got this extra type from something related to this set. Anyway, she's a 3/4 with reach for 4 that says whenever another creature we control enters, you may pay 2 generic, and when you do, that creature deals damage equal to its power to target creature. And she has partner, which is not relevant in this deck. But what this means is every creature essentially has kicker after the fact, like kicker not on the stack, but once it enters, we get to pay that kicker cost of 2, and they get a free Rabid Bite of dealing damage equal to its power to some other creature. Every creature comes in with Rabid Bite as an option. Rabid Bite costs 2 anyway, and this is even fixing our mana on it. Halana is so cool. Being able to take all of our big creatures that come in. Maybe we have Halana in play when we cast Durnan. Durnan enters, and we have a trigger from Halana, and we have a trigger from our background of Noble Heritage. Let's say we let Noble Heritage resolve first and put 2 counters on our commander. Then we pay the 2 mana from Halana's trigger, and now Durnan is doing 5 damage to a creature we don't control. Very strong. I just really like Halana in this deck. It's just a cool, repeatable way to clear our opponent's stuff out of the way. especially with our big creatures. So that covers our interaction section. We are, like I mentioned, running a single Wrath. It is this Realm Cloaked Giant, which we've already seen. Lets us pay 5 mana to destroy all non-giant creatures. Probably hits all of our creatures too, but that's what board wipes do. If we need to reset the board, it's nice to be able to have the option to do so, especially if we can do so with Undaunted and just pay 2 white mana to do so. Cool. So that covers all of our support sections of the deck. We're going to go over the sections that supplement our game plan now, starting with our Synergy section. There we go. These are all cards that give us options, like additional uses for our counters. We've seen all but one of them. Diadrine lets us use those counters to make robots and draw cards. Scholar of New Horizons lets us use those counters to find a plains and either put it on the battlefield tapped or put it in our hand. Quilled Great Worm lets us use those counters to recast it from the graveyard. And Sanctuary Warden, when it attacks or enters, lets us remove a counter from a creature or planeswalker we control to draw a card and make a 1/1 citizen. But we also have the Duke, Rebel Sentry, another Avatar the Last Airbender card, although from the Eternal set. This is a single white for an 0/1 legendary human rebel ally that enters with a 1/1 counter. So it's a 1 mana 1/2. Alright. We can tap and remove a counter from the Duke to put a 1/1 counter on another target creature we control, and it gains hexproof until end of turn. So technically, the Duke should be in our counters section. So I guess I will add him right now. Sorry about that, everyone. But at least now we know. So the Duke does put a counter. I forgot that he takes his counter and puts it on something else. I remembered that he just gives hexproof. So this is a sweet ability for us to protect things, especially our commander, at instant speed. We tap the Duke, put a counter on Durnan. Durnan is now hexproof to fizzle whatever kind of targeted effect that was maybe going at him. And then if we have ways to put more counters on our creatures, like our Noble Heritage background, we can put those counters on the Duke, which sort of reloads him and his ability to move those counters and give hexproof each time he does. Neat. So that is our Synergy section. Next, we are up for our Evasion section. These are all cards that give us ways to get our creatures past our opponent's defenses, and we've seen all but 2 of them. So we've seen Hunter's Talent. Second chapter gives one of our attacking creatures +1/+0 and trample until end of turn. Garruk's Uprising gives all of our creatures trample. Ronus can be activated to give one of our creatures +2/+0 and trample until end of turn. Goreclaw, when Goreclaw attacks, gives all of our power 4 or greater creatures +1/+1 and trample until end of turn. Agonosaur Rex can be cycled to put 2 1/1 counters on one creature or vehicle, and then that gains trample and indestructible until end of turn. Glorious Sunrise, all of our creatures can get +1/+1 and trample until end of turn at the beginning of combat. And Endray's Forerunners enters and gives all of our other creatures +2/+2 and vigilance and trample until end of turn. And of course, it has trample and haste itself. What we haven't seen is our Abzan Falconer. 2 and a white for a 2/3 human soldier with Outlast for a single white, meaning at sorcery speed we can pay 1 and pay a white and tap the Falconer to put a counter on it. That's fine. But it also gives each creature we control with a counter on it flying. So even if this is just a 2/3 creature for 3 that gives our commander flying, that can be a win with commander damage before too long. Usually, Abzan Falconer is a little bit of a removal magnet, since if we're spreading our counters around, it makes a lot of our board fly. And in a deck that is green and has huge creatures, having those creatures fly is pretty threatening. So yeah, pretty solid. But even more fun, perhaps, is Champion of Lambholt. 1 and double green for a 1/1 human warrior. It's a human and a warrior, just like Durnan, that says creatures with power less than this creature's power can't block creatures can't block our creatures. So that means if Champion of Lambholt somehow is a power 4, then none of our opponents creatures that have power 3 or less can block any of our creatures, no matter what the power of our creatures are. If our Champion of Lambholt becomes a 10 mana or a 10 power creature, and no one of our opponents controls any creatures that have greater power than 9, all of our creatures are unblockable. So it behooves us to make the Champion of Lambholt as big as we possibly can make it, maybe with our our Noble Heritage background. Rather than putting those counters on our commander, maybe we just put them on the Champion of Lambholt and make it as big as it possibly can be, so that then our commander and all of our creatures, including the champion, can become unblockable. In addition, whenever another creature we control enters, we put a 1/1 counter on the champion. So we don't even have to put our counters from our Noble Heritage on Champion of Lambholt. We can to accelerate things, but if we're casting 2 spells per turn, which often we are, and often it's 2 creature spells per turn, that's 2 more counters on the champion every time. So eventually, this can absolutely make it so our opponents get wrecked. Now, it is also the case that we might make the champion really big, swing in thinking that we can't attack, and our opponent kills the champion before the declare blocker step, which means now our creatures are able to be blocked that same turn. That is a possibility, but it's something worth looking at and thinking about when we're attacking with our big creatures. So yeah, Champion of Lambholt is solid for this deck. And that covers our evasion section. Let's look at the ways that we have to protect ourselves and our stuff. We've seen most of these. We've seen all but one of them. The Duke can be tapped to put a 1/1 counter on another creature we control that gains hexproof until end of turn. We can use Collective Resistance to give a creature hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. A Naro, Wolvid Familiar, gives our commanders indestructible during our turn. Shalai gives all of our other creatures and our planeswalkers and us hexproof. Sigarda gives all of our other permanents hexproof. Agonosaur Rex can be cycled to give trample, 2 counters, and indestructible to a creature or vehicle. Carvanista, we can use the Lupari Shield to give humans we control indestructible until our next turn. And Kogla can either become indestructible, but can also bounce a human we control in order to become indestructible whenever we want to activate that ability. The only other card we haven't seen are the Swifties. This is Swiftfoot Boots, 2 generic for an equipment that equips for 1 and gives the equipped creature hexproof and haste. Haste on our commander is very cool. Hexproof is even better. So a very inexpensive effect for 2 and then just 1 every time we want to equip it, or even move it around on some of the big creatures we're casting, and just protect those creatures or our commander. Pretty sweet. That is our protection section. We do have some payoffs in this deck. These are what I like to say payoffs are, is the cards that reward us for what we were going to do anyway. We have a few cards that care about us having creatures enter the battlefield. Karametra cares about us casting creature spells, so that's a good example. But we also have the Evolution Witness. This is 2 and a green for a 2/1 Elf Shaman and Mutant that for 1 and a green can adapt 2. Adapt is a little bit of a weird ability. It means if the creature doesn't have any counters on it, it gets this many 1/1 counters. But we can activate it whether or not the Evolution Witness has counters on it. So something to watch for when you're using this on, let's say, Magic Arena or something. You can adapt it, it just won't get any counters when you do, because it has to have no counters on it first. Kind of weird. But yeah, it can, for 3 mana, is a 2/1 that can, for 2 mana, can become a 4/3, which is fine and is ferocious. But we almost never adapt this card in this deck, because whenever 1 or more counters are put on it, we return target permanent card from our graveyard to our hand, which is to say, we get to regrow a permanent card whenever we adapt this, or when we put counters on it any other way. We have ways to put counters on all of our creatures. We have our Noble Heritage putting 2 counters on something at the start of our upkeep every turn. We put it on Evolution Witness and we get things back every time we want to. Yeah, very, very powerful for us. So next, after our payoff section, is our pump section. These are all cards that pump up our creatures or help them with their attacks in ways that aren't our counters. So we've seen most of these. Hunter's Talent can give +1/+0 and trample to one of our attackers when we attack. Ronus can give +2/+0 and trample when we activate it. Goreclaw gives all of our attacking creatures, or all of our creatures that are power 4 or greater, +1/+1 and trample when Goreclaw attacks. Glorious Sunrise can give all of our creatures +1/+1 and trample if we choose for it to at the start of combat. Endrace Forerunners gives all of our creatures +2/+2, vigilance and trample when it enters. And Duelist Heritage doesn't pump up creatures at all. But it's in this section because this is the best fit of a place to put it. And we're using the Avatar printing simply because it's the least expensive and it's cool. This is 2 and a white for an enchantment that says whenever 1 or more creatures attack, you may have target attacking creature gain double strike until end of turn. This is another nice double strike source for us for Durnan, of course. And like I mentioned, double strike can sort of act as evasion because the defending player might choose to just chump block with it. But they might, if they don't have a creature they're willing to chump block with, then they might just take the damage, which is then double damage. But note, Duelist Heritage does not say whenever 1 or more creatures you control attack. This will happen every time any player attacks, as long as they're attacking with 1 or more creatures. If it's us, we get to choose an attacking creature we control to get double strike. If it's an opponent, we get to choose one of their creatures to gain double strike. So we can use this in a great political way. We can say, hey, you might want to attack one of our other opponents rather than me because if you do, I can give one of your creatures double strike. In fact, I will make an agreement. If you don't attack me, I'll give one of your creatures double strike. I'll even let you choose which one, something along those lines. There's a lot of times playing with this card that players forget you have it and forget that it triggers on everyone's turn whenever anyone attacks. You might see opponent A go, I think I'll attack opponent B. And opponent B will go, okay, I'm going to block like this. And we say, no, before you block, Duelist Heritage triggers, I'd like to give opponent A's biggest creature double strike. And they both say, oh, I forgot about that. And now combat math has changed, probably in opponent A's favor, but maybe not. Most importantly, though, the reason we do that is not just to disincentivize our opponents from attacking us, since they get the reward of the potential of double strike if they don't attack us, but also it lets us do more damage to our opponents using our other opponents' attacks. So this can be really powerful for us and can really help us out. One last little thing of a little bit of a sneakier way, not really sneaky, but a little bit of a more subtle way to use Duelist Heritage is this. You might say, hey, I know you're, you might say to opponent A who's attacking, let's say opponent B, you might say to them, hey, I have a Duelist Heritage trigger here. I may choose for one of your target attacking creatures to gain double strike. If you agree not to attack me for the next turn, I will do so. Otherwise, I will not choose to give something double strike. And at that point, you can make a deal. You can essentially sell this double strike effect to that opponent or not. And if they say yes, then great. You go ahead and follow through with it, and you're probably protected from them unless they renege on their agreement. But if they say no, you can say, okay, I still choose to give one of your creatures double strike. And they'll be like, but I didn't make the deal. And you're like, yeah, but it helps me either way. I just wanted to see if I could get something out of it too. Or you just don't tell them that. And you're like, well, that's true. You didn't make the deal, but I'm still going to do it. And if they say why, you say, well, it's for you to wonder about, you know? So yeah, Duelist Heritage can give us great effects, but playing a little politics with it can even be more fun. And this seems like exactly the kind of thing to do at the table when you're playing a card like Noble Heritage, or if you're at a tavern and you're trying to wheel and deal and negotiate with other adventurers about, you know, what kind of adventures you're going on. So that covers our pump section. We have a little bit of recursion. We've seen all of these already. Evolution Witness lets us regrow a permanent from our graveyard whenever we put any number of counters on it. Quilled Greatworm can come back from the graveyard if we cast it by removing 6 counters from among creatures we control, in addition to paying its casting cost. And Tlinkali Hunter has that Retrieve Prey adventure that lets us get a creature card from our graveyard into exile, and we have that turn or our next turn to cast it from exile. And that's our recursion section. Let's go now to our Power Matters section, something I've mentioned a couple of times already. These are all cards that care about us having big power creatures, and so yeah, we've seen all of them. Hunter's Talent cares about us having creature power 4 or greater at our end step, and if we do, we draw a card once it's level 3. Garruk's Uprising draws us cards when we have power 4 or greater creatures enter, or if we already have one in play when it enters. Gwenna can let us untap her and put a counter on her if we cast a creature power 5 or greater. Ronus cares about... Ronus can't attack or block unless we have a creature power 4 or greater. Summon Fenrir's 3rd chapter ability draws us a card if we have a creature with the greatest or tied for the greatest power. Goreclaw cares about all of our creatures that are power 4 or greater, both by discounting them by 2 generic mana and by pumping them up whenever Goreclaw attacks. The Earth King cares about us attacking with creatures power 4 or greater, gives us a rampant growth for each one that does. Garruk's Pack Leader cares about power 3 or greater creatures we control entering and draws us a card when that happens. And of course, Glorious Sunrise draws us a card at the start of our combat if we choose this mode on it. It draws us a card if we control a creature power 3 or greater. So a little baby Garruk's Pack Leader trigger. And that is our Powers Matter section. I just wanted to take a look now at all of our creatures that make tokens. We've seen all of them, but it's just a nice way to supplement our 45 creature deck. So Diadrine, if we attack and remove a counter from each of up to 2 creatures we control, we make a 2/2 robot, plus draw a card. Lovestruck Beast has that Heart's Desire adventure to make us a 1/1 human. Bramble Sovereign can make us token copies of non-token creatures we have enter if we pay 1 and a green when they enter. Angelic Sellsword comes with a 1/1 Thunder Junction Mercenary and makes a new one every time we have another non-token creature enter under our control. Geist Honored Monk enters with 2/1/1 flying spirits. God Eternal Oketra gives us a 4/4 vigilant zombie warrior whenever we cast a creature spell. Sanctuary Warden makes us, whenever it attacks or enters, and we remove a counter from a creature or planeswalker we control, a 1/1 green and white citizen creature token, in addition to drawing us a card. And Silverwing Squadron, when it attacks, makes us a number of 2/2 vigilant white knight creature tokens equal to the number of opponents we have. And that covers every one of the spells in our deck. As usual, we're going to go over our land base now, starting with our basics. We are running 11 forests and 9 plains. The proportions of colors in our deck would probably ask that we run more forests and fewer plains if we want to make our basics closer to those proportions. But generally, I like to err on the side of balance, especially because one of our commanders is a 2-mana white enchantment. So we want to make sure that we can always get that out on turn 2 or as soon as possible. So running a few more white sources and a few fewer green sources to balance it out usually works out fine for us. I found this is a very nice balance for us. Of course, we are running the Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate arts with some nice flavor text on them. I really like seeing flavor text, on basic lands. So nice. Scattered Groves is a bicycle land. That means it is a forest and a plains. It's inherently both basic types, so we can find this with Farseek or with our other cards that can go find us a plains. We can get one of these. If it doesn't say basic plains, then we can just get the Scattered Groves. Usually those effects, like Scholar of New Horizons, would put that card into play tapped, if it would put it into play at all. And so this coming in tapped on its own is fine. But playing this as just a tap land that taps for both of our colors and is both of our types is fine as well. Or, when this is in our hand, we can cycle it for 2. So we can pay 2 and discard it to draw a card. Something we might do late game when we just don't need more mana, we just need a card. Or if maybe our draws just aren't working out for us, happens to the best of us. And if this is in our hand early on and we're desperate for more cards, we can cycle it then, and that's fine too. Next we have Sunpetal Grove. This is a check land, which means it taps for green or white, but it enters tapped unless we control a forest or plains. Obviously we've got 20 different basic forests and plains, but Scattered Groves is also a forest and a plains. So we actually have 22 cards in the deck, these basics, Scattered Groves, and we have a Tango land as well, that would make Sunpetal Grove come in untapped. Very, very nice for us, because it's 2/9 of our deck, essentially, are working toward making this an untapped duel. That's pretty solid for us. If you were to want to upgrade Sunpetal Grove, I might say Overgrown Farmland, the slow land, which comes in untapped as long as we have 2 other lands of any type. So it's not the first or second land that we get into play. It, comes in untapped. That's more expensive right now, although the price for it may drop because at time of recording, Reality Fracture is coming out in a few months, and that set is likely to reprint the Allied Color slow lands, since Secrets of Strixhaven a few months ago reprinted the enemy ones. So maybe Overgrown Farmland's price will drop, and if it does, just include it in the deck in addition to Sunpetal Grove, because this is not going to drop, it's not going to rise in price probably, and it's still good for this deck. And if you were to want to upgrade this bicycle land, I might say that Temple Garden, the shock land, is the best way to go with it. Albeit, of course, both of these alternatives are much more expensive. Sungrass Prairie is next. This is a filter land. It works just like our Selesnya Signet. We pay 1, tap it, and it makes both of our colors. Everything I said about the Signet is just as true here, and very helpful for us. So yeah. Next, we've got these 4 fixing lands. Of course, we're running Command Tower. It is a land with the same text as Arcane Signet. It taps for 1 mana of any color in our commander's color identity. So in this deck, white or green, it's an untapped dual land for us. We would run it if it was a tap land, which we are in Path of Ancestry. It's a tap land with the same text as Command Tower, but it also says when we use its mana to cast a creature spell that shares a creature type with our commander, we scry 1. So obviously, if we cast Noble Heritage, it's not a creature spell. So even though it shares a type with itself, it doesn't share a creature type with itself, so we don't get a scry. But if we cast Durnan, Durnan is a human warrior, so he shares types with himself, so we'll get to scry off of that with Path of Ancestry's mana. We also have an additional 11 other humans, one of which is a warrior, and we have Hamza, which is an elephant warrior. So there's 12 other creatures in this deck, beyond just Durnan, that will give us a scry thanks to Path of Ancestry. So pretty solid there. We're running Crow's and Verge. This is a crackable fetch, essentially. It is a tap land that taps for colorless, or we can pay 2 and tap it to sack it. Pay 2, tap and sack it to search for a forest and a plains, put them on the battlefield tapped, and shuffle. So this is essentially Myriad Landscape, but rather than finding only finding 2 basics that share a type, we can only find a forest and a plains. That's it. But it doesn't say basic for either of those. So if we find a basic forest and a basic plains, if we find our bicycle land and our tango land, that's probably the best option here. Pretty nice way to accelerate ourselves, and earlier than something like a Blighted Woodland would. So good. We also have Temple of the False God. Not everyone's favorite land, but it taps for 2 colorless mana and it comes in untapped. It's a soul land, like Sol Ring. We just can't activate it unless we control at least 4 other lands, so 5 or more lands including itself. So while this doesn't accelerate us early game, and if our opening hand is like a Scattered Groves and a Temple to the False God and nothing else mana-wise, we probably want to mulligan that. It's still sweet to be able to play this as our 5th land drop and go from making 4 mana to making 6. It accelerates us even mid and late game, and in a deck that has a bunch of expensive creatures, even if we're having to cast them undaunted, this can be really useful for us. So yeah, I think it's perfect for the power level of decks that I make for this channel. We are running Brushland. This is a Pain land. It is exactly like our Talisman of Unity. Comes in untapped, taps for colorless, or we can tap it for green or white if we're willing to let it do a damage to us. Everything I said about the Talisman is just as true here, but it's in our land base. Even better, an untapped duel. That's great. Fortified Village is a reveal land. This is a land that taps for green or white, and as it enters, we can reveal a forest or plains from our hand. And if we don't, it comes in tapped. So oftentimes, this is either a tap land early on, or it's an untapped duel, because we have, again, 22 cards in this deck that are either forests or plains. Fortified Village can be great for us. Even if we have to play it as a tap land, still not that bad. If you were to want to upgrade this, I might say Hushwood Verge. I like the Verge lands as a sort of take on check lands that makes for a good upgrade from reveal lands. We've got a Temple of Plenty. It is a scry land. Comes in tapped, makes our colors, scries 1 when it enters. Great. Just very simple, perennially reprinted, minimum pricing. If you want to get some of these, it's worth totally filling up. They're in Foundations. Why wouldn't you? If you want to upgrade this to a Lush Portico Surveil land, that would be much more powerful and much more expensive, just like any of these upgrades I'm suggesting. And Canopy Vista is our Tango land. It is a forest and a plains, so it's another typed duel, and it enters tapped unless we control 2 or more basics, which is not hard to have happen in this deck. So this might be a typed untapped duel for us. Pretty solid. And again, if you want to upgrade this to that Temple Garden, that's a good option for you. Finally, we have these 7 utility lands. I went with Abandoned Air Temple, but you could go Gavany Township. It's a little less expensive price-wise. It's a little less functional, mechanical-wise, but they both sort of do the same thing. This is a land that enters tapped unless we control a basic land. 20 of our cards in this deck are basics, so it's pretty likely that this is going to be an untapped white source for us. Pretty good. And we can pay 3 and a white and tap it to put a 1/1 counter on each creature we control. A nice little mana sink that gives us a way to add more counters to our creatures. Obviously, you could run Gavany Township as well, but it doesn't produce colored mana and requires you to pay 2, a green and a white, and tap it to get counters on your creatures. So yeah, different options there. But yeah, this is what I went with. Speaking of mana sinks, we have Bondur's Enclave, another card that cares about powers. This enters untapped, taps for colorless, or we can pay 3, tap it, and draw a card if we have a ferocious creature. Great. Just a nice way to, if we have a little mana left over at the end of our turns or a turn cycle, we can pump it into Bondur's Enclave and get ourselves an extra card. Castle Ardenvale is next. This is a land, again, that enters tapped unless we control the plains, and it taps for white. And then we can pay 2 and double white to tap it and make a 1/1 human creature token. This is something we're not usually doing in this deck, but the cost of inclusion is very low, and it helps round out our white sources. So yeah, solid for us. And again, if we happen to be stalling on lands or on card draw, which we usually aren't in this deck, thanks to our commander giving us card advantage, Castle Ardenvale can at least give us some creatures. if we've got mana left over. Demolition Field is next. I already, during my little rant about Emergency Eject, talked about how the kind of decks I make are usually played at tables that don't want land destruction. And that's fine. But you do have to have one answer to a land. And you could run Beast Within, or you could run Generous Gift for that if you want. But I think running one in your land base, like Demolition Field, is probably more... it's more acceptable, even for those tables, simply because the reason you need it is because sometimes people play lands that become threats, whether it's a Rogue's Passage that's making a Voltron player's huge commander unblockable so that you have to deal with that or you lose, or someone running, like I often like to say, a Glacial Chasm, or even a Maze of Ith or something that's stopping us from doing any of our damage to them, then that means it's something that's empowering an opponent's game plan or disempowering ours. That means it's fair game for us to remove, even if it's in a land base. Demolition Field is my best suggestion for the one-of option for how to do that. This is a land that enters untapped and taps for colorless, or we can pay 2, tap, and sack it to destroy a non-basic land that an opponent controls, and that opponent then gets to search their library for a basic land and put it on the battlefield untapped. And so do we. So we get to replace our demo field, they get to replace their problematic non-basic that we sniped, and no one is down any mana, assuming we didn't snipe like a Gaia's Cradle or something, and if we did, that's fair to do. So yeah, even at the tables that don't want to see land destruction, assuming both we and the players whose thing we're targeting have basics left in our library, no one's lost a land, and so Demo Field kind of avoids all the field ads that even those kind of pods might have. So I think it's a good option. Karn's Bastion is next. This is just one more mana sink for us if we need it. It comes in untapped, it taps for colorless, and we can pay for and tap it to proliferate. So if we have a bunch of counters already, then this is a good way to add some more. Sure. Again, just like with our Castle Ardenvale and our Abandoned Air Temple, all of these are very low cost of inclusion cards. They may not help us all the time, but they're really not ever hurting us, so yeah, might as well have some options on our land base. Next, we've got Mosswort Bridge, which is so cool. This is a land with Hideaway 4. It comes in tapped, and when it does, we look at the top 4 cards of our library, exile one face down, and put the rest on the bottom in a random order. We're sort of exiling this card under the bridge. It doesn't even have to be a creature, even though it does sort of mirror what Durnan does when he attacks with the 4-card thing. Then, when Mosswort Bridge untaps, we can tap it for green, or we can pay a green and tap it, and we can play that exiled card without paying its mana cost if all of our creatures are total power 10 or greater. So one more card that cares about power, and essentially we're saying whatever card we exiled under this, its cost is now 2. A green and tapping the bridge. As long as we've got enough creatures with a total power of 10 or greater, we can, at instant speed, cast that spell that's under the bridge, and that's pretty sweet. And then even after that's the case, the bridge still taps for green for us. Nice. Finally, I mentioned Rogue's Passage a moment ago. We are running it ourselves. This is a untapped land, taps for colorless, or we can pay for and tap it to make a creature unblockable this turn. We can of course use this on Durnan, which sometimes means we just get in unblockably for a commander damage win. We can use this on any of our other creatures to do just more regular damage. We can use this on an opponent's creature by either making a deal with them and doing it politically. Of course, we want to do that after they've attacked with the creature, or make the deal and then activate a Rogue's Passage after they've attacked, because we don't want to make their creature unblockable and then let them attack us with it unblockably. Or we can do this on an opponent's creature in much the way that we were talking about with Duelist's Heritage, and just say, oh, you're already attacking? I'm going to make your creature unblockable. Just like we might say, you're already attacking? I'm going to make your creature have double strike. And when we do that, people don't expect it. People don't, especially with Rogue's Passage, that's not triggering like Duelist's Heritage is. No one expects us to spend essentially 5 mana, 4 and tapping the passage itself, to make a different player's creature unblockable, especially without making a deal for it. But when we do that, we're causing the attacking player to do damage to one of our opponents for us. It costs us essentially 5 mana, and that's all. It also means that that creature that is attacking is likely tapped now, so it's not able to block us next time we attack in. So lots of fun can happen with Rogue's Passage, especially if we use it politically, which is good for this deck, but also on that sort of sneaky, like, oh, I'm also going to make your creature unblockable, which might kill one of our other opponents and just helps us out. So yeah, very cool with Rogue's Passage in this deck. And that sums it up. Again, I'm releasing new Baldur's Gate commander decks every Monday until I've done them all, so let me know in the comments if you'd like to see a specific commander. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you want to support what I do here, make sure to like and subscribe, ring the bell if you want to be notified when my videos go live, consider joining my Patreon at patreon.com/secondmonitormagic, or becoming a member of this channel on YouTube, and remember, most of all, that magic is fun. You should play more Magic.